So this case is such a mess that in the beginning, you don't even have a starting point. Except for Abraham Shakespeare winning the lottery.
I said, you won $30 million. Do not show this to anybody.
But everybody's there saying, give me, let me have.
Women with car full of kids would pull up and say, oh, the Lord led me to you. And I would be like, no, that would be Google Maps, honey.
One of the things that people talk about when they talk about winning the lottery is that it's cursed.
I really would like my old life back where I could walk the streets like a normal person.
But then all of a sudden, things go silent. And nobody knows where Abraham Shakespeare is.
Hey, have you heard from Abe? No, I haven't heard from him. Have you seen him? No, I haven't seen him either.
A lot of people says, well, I think he took his money and wants to get away from all this.
So how many people in Polk County owed Abe Shakespeare money?
Over 20, maybe close to 40.
There are all these people with this web of connections to Abraham Shakespeare, and any one of them might be someone who has a motive to see him dead. We all dream of a moment in life that will instantly change everything. A stroke of luck, and nothing will ever be the same again. That's exactly what happened to a man with the name you will never forget, Abraham Shakespeare.
While Abraham Shakespeare was on a trucking route with his colleague, Michael Ford, they stopped at a convenience store.
Mike Ford, who's the driver, says, you need anything? Abraham, who's staying in the truck, says, yeah, you know, give me 2 quick picks.
Right here at this gas station in a town with a name you just can't make up, Frostproof, Florida. 1 stop, 2 quick pick lottery tickets, one of which would change his life forever. A jackpot worth $30 million.
Hello, Florida. It's Wednesday, November 15th, and here are tonight's winning numbers. 12.
When Abe realized he'd won the lottery, he wasn't even sure it was real. So he brought the ticket to his cousin, Ashley McMillan.
I looked up at him, and I looked at the ticket again, and I looked up at him. I said, you won $30 million. He said, okay, I just wasn't sure. I needed somebody I could trust to tell me that. And I was like, do not show this to anybody else. You go to Tallahassee and cash this in immediately.
News of Abe's win quickly spread across the state of Florida.
It was at this convenience store that Abraham Shakespeare bought the lotto ticket that changed his life.
A Lakeland man is waking up a millionaire this morning. 40-year-old Abraham Shakespeare. He had the winning numbers, and Mr. Shakespeare, I'd like to give you my phone number.
Yeah. He opted to take home the lump sum of $17 million. But then after taxes, he ended up with $12 million.
Still, you know, $12 million is a huge chunk of change for a man with a pretty humble background who came from the central Florida town of Lakeland.
Lakeland is small town feel with a little bit of city in it, beautiful lakes. Areas are quiet, some parts are rural, and it's in between Orlando and Tampa.
And here in Lakeland, Abe lived in a modest neighborhood where many folks struggled to make ends meet.
This is the famous Abraham Shakespeare's ex-home, where he rented and lived.
This is where they lived before.
This is where they lived before he won the lottery. It was set up just like this. Nothing's changed besides painting.
Pretty modest place.
Pretty modest.
Abraham's life has been hardscrabble for its duration. Abraham dropped out of school. He had been in a little bit of trouble as a youth, nothing major, just little petty theft kind of things. And as he grows older, he takes on a series of odd jobs. Riding the garbage truck for the city of Lakeland, sweeping up in somebody's barber shop.
Abraham had a strong friendship with Greg Smith, who owned the barber shop.
He worked at my barber shop as a cleanup guy, sweeping up and mopping floors. He was a less fortunate person, so let him work, get paid, or buy him something to eat. Abraham was an easygoing person. He took life just as it came.
What kind of guy was he?
He was a humble guy. Humble, respectful. You know, he wasn't a hard ass. He was a good dude. He didn't smoke, he didn't drink, he didn't do dope. He was just trying to survive, trying to make it in the world as most people do, but without being in the limelight of problems and trouble.
Even though he didn't have a whole lot, he was very content.
Abraham has all of this money. He can move anywhere he wants to, but instead, he stays home. He stays in Lakeland.
I think to a lot of people's surprise, Abraham did not go buck wild, as they say, when he got his money. He didn't overindulge.
Abraham says, I want to buy a car. So off me and Abraham went to the car dealership. Abraham walks up on this particular car and he liked it. And I'm like, yeah, Abraham, that's nice, but you know, it's a used car. Used or whatever, it was a gem to him.
He said he would go to Denny's to eat breakfast. He bought a Rolex watch from a pawn shop.
He come to the shop every day, millionaire, come to the shop, sweep the floor.
Yes.
You better not drop a penny on the floor. First thing he gonna say, he gonna pick it up, he gonna say, pennies make dollars.
Abraham doesn't spend much money on himself, but the one thing that he really wants is a new house. So he buys a 5,000 square foot, $1 million mansion.
Prior to winning the lottery, he would walk around this exclusive neighborhood and he would dream about living in one of those homes. He was able to buy his dream home for $1 million in the gated community.
And Abe quickly opened his doors to friends and even strangers. And one of those strangers was Centuria Butler, who was at the time down on her luck when she met Abe at a party he threw at his new house.
At the end of the night, he was like, where are you going? I was like, I might be staying in my car tonight. He was like, well, you know, you can stay here until you get on your feet. He literally let me as a stranger move into his house.
A friendship blossomed. Centuria and Abe grew close, and eventually they welcomed a son named Jeremiah.
When the baby is out and they bring him over to the bed, Abraham with his long arms, he swoops in and he takes the baby right out of her hands. And he's holding him. And he's like, yeah, I got my snookum pookum.
But for Abe, it wasn't enough just to provide for his own family. Abe seemingly wanted to help everyone. And pretty soon, his generosity spread throughout Lakeland.
When Abraham won the lottery, all of Lakeland and Polk County won the lottery.
People did not hesitate to come to Abraham and say, you know, I need money for my mortgage. They're going to foreclose on my house. They're going to repossess my car. I've got to bury my mother. Everything you can think of that someone needed.
Now you're dealing with all kind of people you want to look out for and people you don't want to look out for, but everybody's there saying, give me, let me have.
Abraham wins this huge lottery, and then within a day, everyone wants a piece.
I couldn't even talk with him in 10 minutes. His phone was ringing. And by the time he get off the phone with that one, another one would call him.
There were days that random women with car full of kids would pull up and say, oh, the Lord led me to you. And I would be like, no, that would be Google Maps, honey.
It got tiresome to him. He got fed up with it a lot.
I really would like my old life back where I could walk the streets like a normal person, but got people coming up asking for money.
And Abe's fortunes might be about to take an even more serious turn for the worse.
His friend comes forward and says, hey, that's my ticket. All those multi-million dollars, they're mine.
Abraham Shakespeare was on the verge of losing his entire fortune.
When Abe Shakespeare moved into that gated community, he was stepping into his life of luxury as a recent lottery winner. But those gates still couldn't keep people out. Friends, neighbors, even strangers still visited, asking for a favor, a loan, or a handout.
I think it caused him more harm than good. I don't think he enjoyed that money.
It was like, I wish I didn't even have no money. He was dead serious.
there's something called the lottery curse. Lottery winners go bankrupt. They are killed, robbed, kidnapped, and scammed till the end of days.
Most people work and struggle to get millions. When it's handed to you, it's an easy come, easy go, and you're open game. And if you're not prepared for it, you're screwed with it.
Abe tried to manage that flood of requests, turning some of those handouts into loans, but this was far from a perfect system.
One of the things that Abraham did was he set up a business venture in which he became the Hood's bank.
But that also meant that he had to make arrangements with them for when they would pay back and how much they would pay back. This was becoming overwhelming.
Abe was giving out money faster than he could keep track of. And then things took an unexpected turn with that coworker on the trucking route, the guy who bought the winning lottery ticket for him, Mike Ford.
Suddenly, there's a lawsuit against Abraham filed by Mike Ford, who is claiming that Abraham stole the tickets.
I was able to immediately get in contact with him. He was upset because he thought that Michael Ford was a friend.
To defend himself, Abe brought in a high-profile attorney named Willie Gary.
Willie Gary is a force, very self-confident. Willie has a private jet. He drives around in Rolls Royces. He wears, of course, custom-made suits.
Please be seated, ladies and gentlemen.
Mike Ford's claim was that Abraham had gone into his wallet, had taken the lottery ticket. Abraham denies that he ever stole that ticket.
In response to the lawsuit, Abe alleged it was never about a stolen ticket. It was about a demand for $1 million.
Abe's claim was that Mike basically went to him saying, hey, I want $1 million. And Abraham said, I'm not giving you any money. And that's when Mike said, well, I'm going to sue you.
Ford has a different account. He says that when he asked Abraham about the ticket, Abe offered him $1 million, but later refused to pay, saying Ford couldn't prove the ticket was his.
Ford versus Shakespeare was a 5-day trial. Michael Ford did his best to present his case, but the jury only took an hour to find against him.
It was a battle over millions in that courthouse, but in the end, he got to keep all of his money. And then he met someone. He met someone who promised to help him, who promised to protect his fortune, to secure his future. Was Abe's luck finally turning around?
A woman named Doris Moore, they called her Dee Dee, Florida-born, very ambitious, pretty smart. She comes along.
In fall of 2008, Dee Dee goes to this small business conference where she meets the realtor who sold Abraham his $1 million mansion.
And she thought it would be cool to write a book about his life.
Dee Dee is introduced to Abraham, and he agrees to let her profile him.
She wanted to sit down and interview us for her book.
Dee Dee Moore seemed like she was a very professional woman. She was in a suit and heels and hose and everything, and said that she owned a company, American Medical Professionals.
Dee Dee Moore is a self-made businesswoman, a very successful businesswoman with a medical staffing company.
And the more time Dee Dee spent around Abe, the more involved she became, not just as an author, but also as an advisor.
She learns that he has all this money out there in the community. She said, you need a financial advisor. You need some financial help. I am an expert at that. The next thing you know, Dee Dee is Abraham Shakespeare's sidekick and his emissary who goes around to collect money.
She had her own money. She didn't need his money. And that became a trust factor for him.
He's like, you know, she has her own business. She, know how to run things. She gonna help me with my LLCs.
Dee Dee wasn't just helping Abe with his money. She also started recording their conversations, capturing these behind-the-scene moments where, even with her help, he still appeared to be fed up.
Do you get tired of people asking you for money all the time, Abe? Give me your opinion on it.
I've been tired. A year ago.
All of a sudden, things go silent, and nobody knows where Abraham Shakespeare is.
None of his children had heard from him. His mother hadn't heard from him. Nobody had heard from him.
And just like that, Abraham Shakespeare disappeared. No calls, no goodbyes, not a word to the people he loved. It was like he vanished into thin air. Abraham Shakespeare seems determined to shake that lottery curse, especially after his generosity cost him almost all of his jackpot millions. Now he's fighting to get his finances back under control.
Everything was well, and then it got quiet all of a sudden.
In April of 2009, there's a stir going on in the community about nobody having seen Abraham Shakespeare in a while. A little buzz at first, and then it gets louder and louder and louder and becomes a thing.
People start to talk, hey, have you heard from Abe? No, I haven't heard from him. Have you seen him? No, I haven't seen him either. And that kind of started to snowball when everybody started to realize, I haven't heard from him either.
And so at what point did you notice that Abe might have gone missing?
When I would call, he would always answer me or respond back. And when I didn't get that, then it began to make, somewhat of a red flag.
There was this widespread speculation around Lakeland that Abe finally just got fed up with all these people thinking that he should share his fortune with everyone. And as a result, he decided to skip town.
It was common knowledge that Abraham said that he got tired of people asking him for money.
I really would like my old life back where I could walk the streets like a normal person.
When nobody's seen him, for the first couple months, we were like, okay, he did say that he was gonna go away for a while and just let things, kind of die down and chill, and then he was gonna come back.
And friends say Abe had a very good reason not to skip town for good. Even though Abe and Centauria at this point were no longer living together, Centauria says Abe was still a devoted father to their son, Jeremiah.
He was just like so excited about being a father, and he would take a picture every day.
Finally, in November of 2009, almost 6 months since Abe disappeared, Abe's cousin, Cedric Edom, decides to file a missing persons report at the Polk County Sheriff's Office.
Abraham's cousin, Cedric Edom, reported him missing to our missing persons unit, and that's where the whole investigation started.
But the investigation gets off to a slow start. Lots of people are still convinced that there's an innocent explanation for Abe's disappearance.
A lot of people said, well, I don't think he's missing. I think he took his money and wants to get away from all this.
One of Abe's friends, Judy Hagans, even told the police Abe had mentioned leaving the country.
Did he ever discuss any intricate plans with you that, hey, I'm going to disappear and nobody's ever going to see me again?
Yeah,
and
he did.
What was that about? Tell me.
He really wanted to move to Jamaica.
Still, there was an aspect of Abe's disappearance that puzzled some of his friends and family members. All of a sudden, they started receiving these random text messages from him.
All of these people that Abraham would normally just pick up a phone and talk to or stop by to see were getting text messages.
So at this point, there are a bunch of people coming out of the woodwork who are saying that they've heard from Abe.
Right.
I got a text at one point.
And what did that text say?
He was out and just didn't want to be bothered.
And the mother of his child?
Centauria. She received a text message saying he was going on vacation and leaving her for another woman.
I'm texting Abraham and I'm getting texts back, oh, I'm leaving you for this woman and we're going to the Bahamas.
I got a reply from his number. And the reply was, I don't need nobody filing no missing persons report on me. I'm fine.
But Ashley and others close to Abe say they had some serious doubts about whether he was actually the person sending those texts, even though they were coming from his phone.
I knew that wasn't my cousin. This is not Abraham texting me.
There's no way that he could have constructed those text messages because Abraham Shakespeare could barely read and write. In fact, his cousin, Ashley McMillan, used to read him the greeting cards here at this Walgreens where she used to work.
Before he won the lottery, he was always buying Hallmark cards. He was like, hey, can you come read this card to me? I need something that conveys like empathy or sympathy. I asked him one time, I was like, why can't you just read the card? And he looked at me dead square in the face and was like, I cannot read.
It was so suspicious as people were getting text messages because he couldn't read or write. And if it wasn't Abraham, who were the text messages coming from?
That was one of the biggest hurdles we had in the beginning of the case, was nailing down when the last time not only was Abraham seen, but when someone physically and actually talked to him on the phone.
So this case is such a mess that in the beginning, you don't even have a starting point.
Every time we would talk to someone, they had heard something different. It just seemed like every story was leading back to Dee Dee Moore. And so we're just like, okay, we've got to talk to Dee Dee Moore because this lady Dee Dee is associated to every story that we're being told.
For Abe's friends and family, it makes sense that if anyone knows where he is, it would be Dee Dee. I mean, after all, she has been working closely with him to get his finances in order.
As their friendship began to blossom, Abraham and Dee Dee Moore hung out quite a bit. She became a major asset to him by helping Abraham collect on money that was owed to him.
Everybody was very uncertain. Dee Dee had an answer.
When police interviewed Dee Dee about Abraham's whereabouts, she says nothing's wrong. In fact, I'm in constant contact with him.
Her statement was that she talks to him all the time. If we wanted to see him, she would make sure that she brought him to us. So she sends him a text message in front of us and it's like, Abraham, call me, please call me. We wait a little bit and nothing. And she's like, well, I'll call you in the morning as soon as we hear from him. We'll set up a meeting. So we left.
Although Dee Dee can't actually connect police with Abe on the phone, she is able to show them that video that she'd taken of Abe where he says he wants to skip town.
So where do you want to go to?
It don't matter to me. I'm not a picky person.
Are you going to miss your home?
Yep, I miss it, but life goes on.
Weeks go by and there's no word from him, and suspicion begins to mount. But then this startling development. Out of the blue, Abe's mother, Elizabeth Walker, is having dinner at a Cracker Barrel and
Elizabeth's phone rings. And she opens her phone and sees it's Abraham calling. And she said, oh my God, it's Abraham.
Abraham Shakespeare is reported missing on November 9th. Most of his friends and family say they have not seen him or heard his voice since April. Is there a chance at this point in the investigation that Abe Shakespeare might just turn up somewhere?
I think we thought that was a real true possibility. Once we put him in the national database as missing, we got calls from all over the United States, and some of them with super confidence that it was Abraham. It wasn't him, but we had to deal with a lot of that.
With all of these empty leads, investigators are now looking at other angles.
So there's a whole pool of potential individuals that you could look at with some sort of motive if his disappearance did, result in foul play.
We certainly hope Abraham's alive and well, and he has successfully hidden himself away. But our investigation doesn't lead us to believe that at this time.
At this point, detectives are not only concerned that lottery winner Abe Shakespeare might be missing, they're concerned he might be dead. So how many people in Polk County owed Abe Shakespeare money?
Over 20, maybe close to 40.
And so some of them would probably not be so upset if he never appeared again.
That was the problem, is that there was a lot of people that owed him money.
But investigators aren't particularly interested in a man who had claimed that Abe owed him something.
Presiding, please be seated, ladies and gentlemen. Again, if you have a cell phone.
Michael Ford lost a lawsuit to him, claimed the winning lottery ticket was his, went all the way to a trial. He's probably pissed off.
$30 million of upset.
Michael, we're up here talking to you about Abraham Shakespeare. How do you know that name?
Because I went to trial with him for a lotto ticket.
Okay.
And at no time did you see Abraham Shakespeare while you were in Florida? And just for the record, you didn't in any way harm, hurt, or cause Mr. Shakespeare to be missing at this time, did you?
No, sir.
We actually pulled his phone records to confirm that where he was, and he was in Georgia. I mean, we looked at him that hard, but it was more of an elimination thing.
Well, detectives have a long list of possible suspects to go through. Marissa Green at the Ledger in Lakeland is focused on one person, Dee Dee Moore.
I felt like I had a vested interest in finding Abraham Shakespeare, just like the detectives. A couple of weeks before it was officially announced that Abraham Shakespeare was missing, I met Dee Dee Moore over the phone for the first time. She promised that she could produce him and I could interview him, but that never happened, and it went silent. And so that's when my red flag started to raise about this woman and who she was.
Then in December 2009, Marissa is able to convince Dee Dee to come down to the Ledger newsroom for an interview with her and her editor, Lyle McBride. Dee Dee tells them that at the time Abe disappeared, most of his lottery jackpot was long gone.
And he didn't have any money left, really.
Right, except for what he was collecting, the regular little loans. The few that were paying him back, that's what he was living off of, because everything else was froze. Because all his other money was tied up.
She said everybody else was taking advantage of him, but not her, because she had her own money.
That's the kind of person I am. If you've asked my family and my friends, I've been that way my whole life. I always helped people.
During that 3-hour interview, Dee Dee now tells a different story. Now, she insists that Abe left town to avoid having to pay money in the child support fight he is supposedly having with the mother of his son, Centoria Butler.
And so he was very upset and adamant that he would rather spend 179 days in prison, if they find him, than to pay her anything.
There was never a plan to go to court to get child support. I never attempted to go to court to get child support. That was the end of the story.
So during the interview, we played good cop, bad cop, and I was the bad cop. I was the one asking the hard questions of Dee Dee Moore.
Where is Abraham? Well, Abraham knows he was supposed to go for contempt of child support, okay?
Well,
and
that's the question I asked. Where is Abraham?
I do not know. And I told the cops this. I do not know his address. I didn't want to know because of the fact that we knew he would have a warrant out for his arrest.
That interview with Dee Dee Moore at the Ledger, it ends without any new information regarding Abe's whereabouts. But then a month and a half after he was reported missing, there's a surprising turn of events involving Abe's mother, Elizabeth Walker.
Dee Dee befriended her. And they're having dinner together one night. The phone rings, and it's Abraham. Hi, Mom, I love you. Oh, baby, I miss you. Where are you? I can't hear you. It's so loud. I can't really hear you, but I'll be home soon. I love you. I love you, too. And that's the end of the call. Dee Dee says, oh, my God, he called you. See, he's okay. Miss Walker appears to be relieved, but not quite sure, because Abraham sounded different.
Abe's mom is suspicious.
She was suspicious, didn't think it sounded like her son, but in the back of her mind, maybe he really does have a cold, maybe he's really sick.
Turns out the police are able to trace that phone call, and it leads them not to Abraham Shakespeare, alive and well, but to a very different person.
We had that 30-day location tracker on the phone, so we pulled it up, and it's at the Lakeland Mall.
Will that phone call help cops unravel the mystery of what really happened to Abe Shakespeare? Three weeks after Abe Shakespeare's disappearance is reported to police, the full attention of investigators is now on Dee Dee Moore. She was supposed to have been his financial savior, but they've discovered that she has taken over his lottery fortune. What did you see when you looked into his finances?
Abraham didn't have access to a penny of his money. Dee Dee had not only taken over all of his banking accounts, she had transferred money out of the banking accounts.
Dee Dee tells Abraham that for his benefit, he needs to sign over his assets, and so that she can have control of those assets. That's the way she can protect him from anybody coming after him for any money.
She was now living in his house. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, what would make her want to live in this man's house?
Once we were going deep into the investigation, we tried to find out everything we could about Dee Dee, and we found out, she wasn't who she portrayed herself to be.
Dee Dee Moore's got a checkered past. She's been in trouble with the law before. She's no angel.
After graduating from Plant City High School in Florida, Dee Dee was eventually able to start up that medical staffing company. But she had her share of run-ins with the law, a no-contest plea for petty theft in 1999, and a guilty plea for check fraud back in 2002. There was also one incident where she falsely claimed she was carjacked after falling behind on her vehicle payments.
So she drives the SUV down a dark country road one night, and two Latino men, this is her story, hijack her SUV, tie her up, rape her, beat her, and throw her on the side of the road, and take off with the SUV. Long story short, she had hired these guys to take the car and hide the vehicle from everybody.
Dee Dee was convicted of insurance fraud. And that background raises a lot of eyebrows among detectives investigating Abe Shakespeare's disappearance.
She definitely has the ability to manipulate, to lie, to concoct stories and so forth, yeah.
We were really convinced that Dee Dee definitely had more information, and we wanted to push some buttons with Dee Dee.
So police pressed Dee Dee for answers about how she's taken over Abe's finances.
You are in essence Abraham, correct?
Yes.
But my point in all of this is all of these people plus all of the real estate comes up to how much?
But you've got to...
No, comes up to how much, Dee Dee?
I don't know.
Comes up to how much? So, okay, so I've done the rough math, okay? It comes up to almost $3.5 million.
Okay, if I'm guilty of anything, I'm guilty of helping him avoid child support.
I'm not worried about any of that.
Investigators may have their suspicions about Dee Dee, but what they don't have is any hard evidence tying her to Abe's disappearance. Meanwhile, Dee Dee turns to the media to plead her side of the story.
Because of these people.
Are you talking about your meeting with the cops?
Yeah, because of these people, my life has been turned up in the last 2 weeks. All my house has been looked over twice. They've looked through all my papers. They took my computers and downloaded their hard drive. I want
this out of my life. And I feel sorry for Abraham, but it has hardened my heart. I don't know if I'll ever help anybody out anymore.
Then 8.5 months after Abe's disappearance and just a couple of days after Christmas, there's a development that sends this case in a dramatic new direction.
The thing that really turns the case was when Elizabeth Walker got that call from her long missing son. Dee Dee Moore was at dinner with Elizabeth Walker when Abraham called.
Abraham's mother called me, and she's like, Detective Clark, Abraham called me and told me Merry Christmas and that he's okay, but she said it didn't really sound like my son. And I said, what number did that call come from? And she's like, it said private.
It didn't take long for them to look at phone records.
Investigators quickly learned two very critical pieces of information. First, that number is not Abraham Shakespeare's. Second, someone with that phone itself is located very close by, a local mall. So they rush to that local mall to figure out who it is. And incredibly, at almost the same moment they drive in, so does Dee Dee Moore.
And then in drives Dee Dee. It's like a gift from God dropped to us. Crazy. We watch her get out, meet with this guy, hand him a wad of cash.
And this was just, stinking the high heavens.
They talk for a minute, she gets in her car, and she drives away to the north, and this car with this gentleman in it drives away to the south. So we get behind the car, we're following it, and we're like, let's stop it. We go to stop the car. So I just jump out, I go to the guy and I go, you can either park your car, get in our car and come with us, or we're gonna try to put you in prison the rest of your life. And he goes, well, I guess I'm coming with you.
The man in the car, the man who got the cash from Dee Dee and who owns the phone that made the call to Abe's mom, he is none other than the friend of Abe's who ran the local barber shop, Greg Smith.
Do you know Dee Dee Moore? That's what they asked me. Now I'm thinking to myself, Lord Jesus, what is going on? Did you make a phone call to Abraham's mother? I said, yeah. Well, I make the phone call to his mother, pertaining to be Abraham. I'm supposed to mimic his voice and the way he talked best I can to tell his mom that I'm okay.
Said she's gonna pay me $350. I didn't feel right about it, but I thought I was helping Miss Walker feel better because she's been worried about her son. Greg told them then, I think that Abraham is dead. They said, we think so too. And they said, we need you to keep meeting with Dee Dee because we think she has something to do with this. And we need you to work for us.
And I'm thinking to myself, man, when I needed this man stepped in and helped me.
And the reality of what's at stake sinks in for Greg Smith.
The light click on, okay. She actually is under investigation for killing Abraham Shakespeare. I was like, I'll do what I can.
And so begins an elaborate plot to take down Dee Dee Moore and prove her involvement in Abraham Shakespeare's disappearance. Now, this is going to involve not only an undercover sting, a can of Red Bull, but also a discovery made right in this yard. For Abraham Shakespeare, the good news is you have won the lottery. That's also the bad news.
As of this time, we don't know the whereabouts of Abraham Shakespeare.
Detectives are not only concerned that Abe Shakespeare might be missing, they're concerned he might be dead.
We've got to talk to Dee Dee Moore because everybody is bringing her name up. Whatever story they had, everything just kept circling back.
They're saying that I took a gun and killed another human being.
What they need the evidence.
But I guarantee you, Ronald has killed him.
We're like, Ronald? We've never heard of a Ronald.
She kept saying, Ronald killed him. Ronald shot him.
Why are you laughing?
Because
a man is dead. He's been murdered.
I liked him. Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. There are so many things that proves my innocence.
Do you understand how listening to you is bewildering?
Well, do you understand how listening to you is just, it sounds like a bunch of stupidity?
Hello, Florida. It's Wednesday, November 15th. New York tonight's winning numbers.
Abraham Shakespeare won $31 million in the Florida lottery, going from rags to riches.
But as happens to so many lottery winners, Abe is besieged by people asking him for some of that cash.
I really would like my old life back where I could walk the streets like a normal person, but got people coming up asking for money.
Everybody feels that's their opportunity to get paid.
But then he suddenly disappears.
But no one has seen Shakespeare, including his mother, who's beginning to think the Lotto prize may have been a curse.
Yeah, I'm just hoping to hear something.
There is contact. Family and friends receive text messages from Abraham. In fact, his own mother gets a phone call from Abraham.
I answered the phone. I said, hello?
Upon further investigation, detectives learned that the voice was Greg Smith, the owner of the barbershop where Abraham would work.
I was like, Mom, how you doing? This Abraham.
Greg claims he faked that call at the request of a woman named Dee Dee Moore, who was helping Abe with his finances, and the police start investigating her.
Despite running a legitimate business, Dee Dee Moore has a checkered past. She's been in trouble with the law before.
Greg decides he does not want to go to jail, so he helps investigators with their case. And one way that he does it is by becoming a confidential informant.
I didn't set a plan out to go catch her. I just told him I'd see what I could do.
I'm getting ready to talk to Dee Dee. She's getting in the car now.
When I interviewed Greg Smith back in 2012, he showed me how he secretly recorded conversations with her using something he called a catch can, which he invented himself.
It's a Red Bull can.
Look at that thing. I wouldn't figure out how it opens even.
It actually separates in between.
Oh yeah? Wow. That's brilliant.
That's the Dee Dee Moore catch can.
I worked undercover narcotics for 8 years, and I wouldn't have came up with this. Almost all of the meetings were in a car. Here it is sitting in front of her. She doesn't even know it's there.
Well, they'll never know about you anyway. I never give you up. You know what I'm saying?
Ever.
Man, listen, I'm so deep in it with you right now. If you go down, I go down right now.
Yeah.
It was ingenious, but he even took it a step further. He would be smoking small cigars as they talked so that she wouldn't get suspicious. He would make it a point to flick ashes on or into the can as they were talking.
Pretty simple trick, but it worked good, and it gave us a good recording of the car.
I just need some time to get freaking Abraham back.
Dee Dee is recorded telling Greg that Abe is alive. After she had asked Greg to make that fake call to Abe's mom, Dee Dee now asks him to call someone else to continue spreading the news that Abe is okay.
Should I say that he talked to his mom?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that's gonna make it more convincing.
But he told her if she tells anybody, he'll never call back. Okay. You make sure you say that.
That sounds a little bit more convincing.
Say that if she tells anybody, Abraham told her he would never call back.
What's up, Dee Dee?
Greg later reports back to her that the call went well.
So you tell him, yeah, he's still living?
I said, yeah, he's still living. I said, if anybody want to know if he's still living, yeah, he's still living.
At one point, the investigation moves to a local hotel where Dee Dee Moore and Greg Smith meet.
So Dee Dee and Greg go to the hotel to follow up that fake phone call with a fake letter?
Yes, they did.
These rooms is expensive.
We're listening as they're in the hotel.
That's not the same laptop you had, is it? You went and bought that today?
Here comes a brand new laptop and a brand new printer. But she is very paranoid now about leaving any traces that can be taken back to her.
So she's dressed in full hospital gown, gloves, face mask hair so that while she's typing, that none of her DNA gets on the paper or gets on the envelope or anything.
She is determined. You will not find any Dee Dee Moore DNA here.
Chocolate, I don't want you to show this letter to the cops. I just want you to tell them that it was me.
They spent about 2 hours composing this letter to Abe's mother, with Greg offering suggestions to Dee Dee about how Abe would actually talk.
And we're down there laughing because Greg's like, no, maybe you should say bro instead of brother.
If I had to take this letter here, and I had to read this letter, and I had to understand this letter, the letter is convincing to me. It couldn't have came from you.
How do you do it to anybody, but how do you do it to a 70-plus-year-old woman who hasn't seen her son in months? I mean, devious, manipulative, evil.
He puts it in the mailbox, he leaves, I take the letter out of the mailbox and put it in evidence.
Remember, those close to Abe knew that he could barely read or write. I mean, this is a copy of the letter.
Yeah.
And for a guy who, even though his name was Shakespeare, I mean,
right.
He didn't write. This is like 6 or 7 pages.
Exactly.
I only wrote you just in case you really worried, just in case you can't keep this to yourself and you're really worried about me. Here's a Christmas present to you.
The letter is more like a treatise about everything that Abraham would be trying to explain to his mother about why he went away and what hassle he went through once he got all the money, and how sometimes he wishes he didn't have all this money, but that he's doing okay and he's trying to stay away and get his life together. I mean, it went on and on and on for pages.
But what Dee Dee Moore does next will remove all doubt Abraham Shakespeare is not okay at all.
With a body, I can do a plea deal with him.
What do you want?
50 grand.
If you do this, you're going to be a very popular person. You're going to be a legend.
By this point, all of the law enforcement officers' instincts are firing on code red. They feel that Dee Dee Moore knew what happened to Abraham Shakespeare. What they need the evidence.
So at one point, you ask the sheriff to hold a press conference.
As of this time, we don't know the whereabouts of Abraham Shakespeare.
And at that point, the sheriff says, hey, we think that Abe Shakespeare may have been met with foul play.
We suspect that he's met an untimely death.
He also names Dee Dee Moore as a person of interest.
I must tell you, folks, that certainly it is fair to call Dee Dee Moore a person of interest.
After that press conference, I believe she felt the walls closing in on her.
So immediately she calls Greg Smith. We've got to do something. Did you see what Sheriff Judge saying about me?
And that's when the next phase of the case begins, convincing Dee Dee that if Abe is actually dead, to admit what really happened.
They come up with this idea that they will get a fall guy who will say, you know, I'll take the blame and say that I killed Abraham Shakespeare.
We call a guy named Mike Smith. I mean, he's just a very large, intimidating fella, and one of the best undercover guys I've ever worked with.
And his last name happened to be Smith, the same as Greg Smith, and they pretended to be cousins.
So we tell Greg, we just want you to tell her that you have a cousin that's going to prison. If there happens to be something wrong with Abe, I bet for the right amount of money, he'll take a murder rap.
And I said, I know somebody. I got a cousin finna do 25 years that'll take that rap. Yeah, I got somebody.
Here's the deal. I went and talked to him. He said, okay, I'll do this.
When can I help them?
She reacted way more than we expected. She immediately says, I want to meet him. I want to meet him as soon as possible.
So soon after, they arrange a face-to-face meeting in another parking lot in Lakeland.
I pulled in right about this area here.
Okay.
And parked. She comes over, he jumps in the back seat, she jumps in the front.
Hello.
Hello.
All right, this is my baby right here. You gotta take care of her, buddy.
He introduces us. We talk, small talk, briefly for a couple minutes.
Who does she think that you are at this point?
At that point, Greg had sold a story to her that I was a drug dealer. I was just a drug dealer. He knew I was just a drug dealer. They got busted by the feds that was going away, that was willing to take the rap.
Yeah, I'm in over my head. I've never been through nothing like this in my life.
The meeting is taking place in a undercover vehicle that we had equipped with listening devices and recording devices.
And what was Dee Dee's demeanor like in the car? Was she twitchy? Do you think
She was all chipper, just normal. I believe the question was, why would you take the rap?
Why would you do that though for me?
I'm going anyhow. I'm going anyhow.
Well, I can tell you, if you do this, you're gonna be a very popular person. You're gonna be a legend, and probably on the Oprah show.
When I told her, I said, I got busted by the feds, man. I'm gonna go do 25 years. I need the money to leave to my baby mama so she can take care of my child.
What do you want?
50 grand.
Okay. Can I do it in payments? Because I don't have that kind of cash. I'm gonna have to sell some.
I'm gonna need 10 up front. Once I do this, make sure my boy get the money.
Okay.
But that's not enough. You feel like you need more out of her.
I felt like I needed more out of her. I felt like we needed a body. Like I said, I'm gonna need a body. Probably can get a plea deal with them, because they definitely gonna want a body.
Okay.
And then Mike tells her, wherever the body is, I want to move it, because if I'm going to confess to this, I'm going to make it my own. And she brings up, there's a guy named Ronald, a drug dealer.
If you take the rap, he is not going to show up. And I guarantee you, Ronald has killed him. I just know it.
We're like, Ronald? We've never heard of a Ronald.
And Ronald's the one he owed the money to?
Yeah, they were doing a drug deal. No, I think Ronald killed him for the money Abraham had on him. Abraham had a ton of cash on him, like the tune of $800,000.
This is a huge development. Whoever Ronald is, Dee Dee has just admitted for the first time that she knows that Abe is dead.
That's the biggest moment of the case. That's where we know 100% he's dead. I mean, for us, couldn't have been a bigger moment than that right there.
She kept saying, Ronald killed him. Ronald shot him. I said, well, where's the body, Dee Dee? You get with Ronald, ask him, Ronald can tell us body at. That way when I plea deal with, I can tell them the body is right here and they will dig him up.
Okay.
And they'll have a body.
Okay.
Get with Ronald, find we need to know.
Okay.
Holler back at my boy.
Okay, I'll do it.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
It was nice meeting you.
The next morning, Dee Dee calls Greg and says, we need to meet and make it quick.
Dee Dee wants Mike Smith to be able to confess as soon as possible so that the investigators will stop looking at her.
I don't think that they're watching all the properties and all the friends' properties I have.
He goes and meets Dee Dee, and Dee Dee hands him a towel. There's something wrapped in the towel, and she tells him, this is the gun that was used to kill Abraham.
We're gonna grind then we put his handprints on it, and we'll put it somewhere.
So she handed over her gun to you.
Exactly.
She trusted you that much that she handed you the murder weapon.
Exactly.
She asked him to meet him back at the same spot later in the night. She would show him exactly where the body was.
This is the perfect time.
Plant City.
We'll call me in Plant City.
Yeah.
All right.
We set it up for her to take me to the body now.
Just like I figured, the body's still on that property. We're moving the body tonight.
Dee Dee thinks that once Greg and his cousin dig up the body, she's going to be home free. But she has no idea what is actually about to happen next. Not long after Dee Dee meets with the man who she believes will take the rap for killing Abe Shakespeare, she's driving along this road with Greg Smith, heading to a property she owns on the outskirts of Lakeland.
So Highway 60, it's considered a rural area of Hillsborough County. There's a lot of tomato fields, strawberry farms, and so forth.
You feel like you're in the country. Dee Dee's property has 2 ranch-style houses that are several yards apart.
They parked over in this house. We're just kind of on the side of the road with our lights off. She walks Greg right here. There was a 30-foot by 30-foot concrete slab.
Concrete slab in the middle of a field.
Yep. And she takes a piece of angle iron and sticks it in the corner of the slab and sticks it down in there and says, dig. Abraham's body's right there.
It's right here. It'll be 9 foot. It'll be 9 foot deep.
And you're listening to this. You guys must be just going nuts at this point.
I think once we heard that, we both look at each other and go, wow, let's just hope this isn't another Dee Dee spin or scam on things.
We didn't know if we actually had the body down there or not.
As authorities begin this arduous work to uncover what's below ground, they simultaneously set up their next tactic for Dee Dee. A few hours later, investigators have Greg call her again. He says, there's a big problem. When we went to dig up the body, the place was swarming with cops. Dee Dee's response? Meet me at the mall.
Greg and Dee Dee then meet when all of a sudden, boom, the cops pull up. They jump out and they bust Greg.
I'm sure she's thinking that we're arresting Greg for the murder of Abraham. So she's composed and says she wants to come back and talk to us and let us know some things.
Okay, so you get her in here. That's you.
That's me.
Okay, who is this guy?
Gregory Smith.
Gregory Smith.
That's who I know him as.
Okay.
Abraham introduced me to him.
She first says, hey, I'm glad y'all got that guy, Greg. I think that he's done something to Abraham.
Find out what he knows, because he knows where Abraham's at.
And so I let her go on for a few minutes, and I said, look, Dee Dee, I got some bad news for you.
I think you know where I'm going with this, Dee Dee. The gig is up. Okay? The gig is up. Listen, everything that you've told him, everything you've done, everything is recorded, Dee Dee. Everything is recorded.
Finally see her demeanor change. She rests her head on her hand.
We talk to him 10 times a day. We know every move you made. We know everything.
Dee Dee Moore is caught pretty much red-handed.
I want a deal, and I won't give you the person's name.
Dee Dee at various times blamed everybody under the sun for killing Abraham.
He gave me the name of the person that did it.
And here she goes into the whole Ronald, some random drug dealing guy.
I honestly don't know the guy's name. I know him by Ronald.
So it's Greg Smith, it's Ronald, it's Mike Smith, the undercover.
The undercover, it's her son, it's Cedric Edom.
Everybody else.
Crazy, crazy.
Police say there is zero evidence that any of those people were actually involved.
Dee Dee, you've said so many things you can't even keep your head straight.
Okay, well,
listen. Who shot Abraham?
You know who shot him.
No. Who shot Abraham?
You know who shot him.
Authorities allow her to leave because without a body, they didn't have a case to arrest her.
Meantime, back at Dee Dee's property in Plant City, a team has assembled to attempt to find the evidence they need to actually arrest her.
We're talking probably 30, maybe 40 folks. This is definitely not a run-of-the-mill scene. The concrete slab was like a 900 square foot tombstone.
We've got a 30 by 30, 9-inch thick concrete slab that we've got to bust up.
On day one, there was nothing found. They kept digging and digging.
This is a painstaking task. This is 2 inches at a time, sifting through everything.
This was almost an archaeological dig here.
It was. I mean, every quadrant, everything, just so we didn't miss anything.
And at a point, once we hit about 9 feet, we started to uncover what appeared to be human remains.
You were able to look at this corpse and you knew it was Abraham.
You didn't need DNA?
I didn't need fingerprints, I didn't need DNA. I mean, of course we did that, but I looked and there's Abraham.
Investigators from Polk and Hillsborough counties announced a discovery tonight.
We have recovered human remains.
The media was doing a stakeout to try to get reaction from Dee Dee. And she drives by in a truck, rolls her window down.
I'm only coming out because the media will not leave.
And it develops into kind of an impromptu news conference.
They're saying that I took a gun, put it up, and killed another human being, and I would never, ever do that.
But the very next day...
Hey, Dee Dee, they're calling you a murderer. Are you a murderer? No.
Doris Dee Dee Moore denied any involvement in Abraham Shakespeare's murder as she was led into a deputy's car tonight.
It was shocking. Here's someone who was supposed to be helping this guy with his money, and now she's the one charged with his murder.
By the time we presented it to the grand jury, she had provided the murder weapon, the body's behind one of her houses.
It's at about $1 million.
Dee Dee Moore was indicted for first-degree murder, premeditated murder of Abraham Shakespeare.
Dee Dee pleads not guilty, and when her trial starts...
As the now dark-dressed and dressed in yellow defendant took copious notes, lawyers from both sides made their opening arguments to the jury of 8 men and 4 women.
There's one big question. Will a jury believe her defense that she was actually a victim herself of the person she claims killed Abe? Six years after Abraham Shakespeare won the Florida lottery, 3.5 years after he disappeared, the murder trial of Dee Dee Moore is set to begin in this courthouse in Tampa.
State of Florida versus Doris Donegan Moore.
This has been a full day packed with the opening statements this morning and then the testimony this afternoon in what promises to be a full of drama trial.
The public's interest in this case was incredible.
Prosecutors claim Dee Dee Moore swindled.
Journalists are always looking for something that is unprecedented.
Dee Dee's diabolical scheme to steal from, then kill lotto winner Abraham Shakespeare.
Or unusual, conflict, scandal. And this had pretty much all of the elements.
An anaphylactic shock.
Of course, Dee Dee's behavior in the courtroom also helped keep the story going.
Another day, another outburst.
We're not going to go back and forth. You need to compose yourself.
The prosecution is out to convince the jury that Dee Dee meticulously planned Abe's murder.
She conducted a sophisticated campaign to conceal his death by making up stories, by sending text messages.
It don't matter.
Prosecutors show the jury video that Dee Dee took of Abraham in the mansion, and it's really the last piece of video of Abraham alive.
Are you gonna miss your home?
Yep, I miss it, but life goes on.
She's setting up her alibi. She was setting up her story. She knew that Abraham was confronting her about the lack of funds and the ability to access his money and so forth. And it came to a point where, in Dee Dee's mind, she's going to have to do something about this.
Prosecutors believe right after that recording, Dee Dee and Abe traveled to her home in rural Plant City, Florida. And it's there that prosecutors say she shoots him and leaves him until the next day.
The body's on property she owns. The murder happened in her house and with her gun. She admitted she bought the lime that was poured over the body of Abraham Shakespeare.
Prosecutors show video in court of Dee Dee going to Walmart to buy cleaning supplies.
She was purchasing bleach and like latex gloves and I think some shovels to help Mike Smith and Greg Smith dig this body out by hand and dispose of it.
Although Dee Dee has never faced formal charges alleging she stole Abe's money, prosecutors say it was greed that motivated her to kill him.
Centuria is Abraham's former girlfriend, and she tells jurors that Dee Dee told her that she was plotting to take his money.
She made it sound like she wanted to clean him out
Why do you say that?
because she wanted to know about all of his assets. And she was like, I can help you clean him out.
It was just a level of disgust to just know that this is what such a caring and giving person endured.
But the prosecutor's star witness is Greg Smith, who takes the stand to deliver some of the most compelling and devastating testimony at the trial so far.
Greg Smith had been recruited by the sheriff's detectives to become her confidant, and the courtroom was just spellbound by his testimony.
I'm grown and don't have to come back.
When Greg Smith read the letter that Dee Dee Moore had composed in the motel room, jurors were on the edge of their seat.
I've been through a lot, Mom. You know it. You should understand more than anyone. I just need time.
The prosecution also asks Greg Smith about that supposed drug dealer who Dee Dee claimed was the one who actually murdered Abe.
I honestly don't know the guy's name. I knew him by Ronald.
Did Miss Moore address who to blame if you got caught?
Yes, she was addressing the guy Ronald, the imaginary character that she made up.
Ronald is nothing but a fictional character, a character that she created out of her imagination.
The defense, such as it was primarily based on that old premise that the state's case was all circumstantial, that there was no hard evidence, there were no eyewitnesses.
The burden of proof is on the state. It's a very high burden of proof beyond any reasonable doubt.
Dee Dee's lawyer tells the jury there's plenty of reasonable doubt here and that there could be many other possible suspects.
That the drug dealers or killers saw fit to threaten her to keep her mouth shut, or else they would harm her and her son.
The defense argues that Greg Smith could actually have been the mastermind in Abe's murder.
If you study those tapes, most of the ideas about the fall guy, about where's the body, we've got to find the body, we've got to dig up the body and move it, all those things.
By the end of their case, the defense called 0 witnesses, and Dee Dee herself never testified on her behalf.
Tonight, after just 3 hours of deliberation, a jury handed down their verdict.
But no matter what the jury decides about her fate,
Bring the jury in.
Dee Dee's about to tell us exactly what she thinks about it.
They didn't get to hear my side. They didn't get to see my evidence. They didn't get to hear my witnesses.
Why didn't you take the stand then? After almost 2 weeks of this roller coaster murder trial, it's now up to the jury to decide Dee Dee's fate.
Bring the jury in.
Tonight, after just 3 hours of deliberation, a jury handed down their verdict.
Juries do unpredictable things at times.
Is that indeed the jury's verdict?
It was probably 7 o'clock at night. A storm was coming in. Right as they read guilty on the first count,
The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder.
a clap of lightning happens outside and just kind of lights up the courtroom. It was kind of like, yeah, it was wild.
Abraham Shakespeare was your prey and your victim. Money was the root of the evil that you brought to Abraham.
The judge made a brief statement about how heinous her crime was and that he would be sentencing her to life in a Florida state prison without the possibility of parole.
I felt like he did get justice because even though his life was cut short, her life is just going to be long and miserable.
I won't forgive her. I don't forgive, and I never will.
Convicted murderers rarely talk while they still have appeals left, but then again, Dee Dee Moore is no ordinary murderer.
I'm not nervous.
I don't get nervous.
Hi. After Dee Dee was sentenced to life in prison without parole in 2012, 2020 was granted an exclusive interview with Dee Dee here in her cell block's cafeteria. Upon arrival, we quickly learned that Dee Dee wasn't exactly camera shy.
Yeah, I've been on TV before.
Okay, that's good to hear. Yeah. You're a pro.
Let me show you this.
And this is fan mail. This is people.
I have more than fan mail. I have a movie producer doing a big TV screen production of my case.
Despite that jury taking less than 3 hours to convict her, Dee Dee vehemently maintains her innocence.
I think people are complete idiots that think I had anything to do with it. I really do.
When the guilty verdict was read, what went through your mind?
They murdered me by the hands of justice. I'm murdered. You might as well kill me, because this is no type of living in here. Because I would never harm another human being. I would never hurt nobody. I liked Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and Disney. I like Tinkerbell and kind things. I'm not a mean person.
After a 2-week trial filled with damning audio and video evidence, I wondered if Dee Dee might finally come clean about what really happened to Abraham Shakespeare. Did you murder Abraham Shakespeare?
Absolutely not.
Did you bury him in your backyard?
Absolutely not.
Why are you laughing?
Because
a man is dead. He's been murdered,
yes,
clearly.
Yes.
And you're laughing.
Yeah. Because I find it entertaining that people are that ignorant. Because there are so many things that proves my innocence.
You ended up in his house with all the rest of his money. Then he ended up dead in your property.
Okay. But
shot by your gun. You don't find any of that unusual or odd?
Absolutely not, considering the people he hung around. I only knew this man for 4 months, and I'm just gonna, oh my goodness, I met this man, and you know what? I'm gonna plot a murder in 4 months.
Do you understand how listening to you is bewildering?
Well, do you understand how listening to you is just, it sounds like a bunch of stupidity?
So if Dee Dee's claims are so convincing, why didn't the jury buy it? Well, she blames it all on her own attorney.
About me. I personally would have convicted myself for what they got to hear, but they didn't get to hear my side. They didn't get to see my evidence. They didn't get to hear my witnesses.
Why didn't you take the stand then?
Because my
you had
lawyers,
every opportunity to defend yourself.
I wanted my witnesses to take the stand, for me to take the stand. My lawyer says we didn't need it.
Your lawyer was that convinced you were going to win?
Yes.
But Dee Dee's lawyer, Byron Heilman, said the decision not to testify was Dee Dee's, and Dee Dee's alone.
We discussed with Ms. Moore whether she wished to testify. That discussion had gone on for quite some time, and she made the decision not to do that.
But since she claims her case was not properly presented in court, Dee Dee tries with us. People were trying to frame you.
Absolutely.
Why?
Because, first of all, I was an easy target.
A target, she claims, for drug dealers. Remember the story about Ronald, that so-called drug kingpin? Dee Dee claims the gang he allegedly had was out to kill her.
They were gonna take my son and kill him and chop him up and put him on my doorstep.
Who?
These guys that the sheriff's department says didn't exist. That we have witnesses that they do exist.
You give so many different versions that it's absolutely bewildering. Why is that?
I'm threatened. They're making.
So you're lying to the police because you feel threatened?
No, I'm being told to do that. I'm being told to just keep throwing them off.
By
Ronald.
Dee Dee claims she has witnesses who will back up her version of events, but she wasn't eager to share those names with us. Can we talk to your witnesses? Who are they? Do you mind if we take down their names and maybe contact them?
I'd have to ask my lawyer, but I don't know if they'll...
These witnesses don't exist, and that certainly looks like your handwriting.
What do you mean?
That looks like your handwriting. What you said were witnesses' notes looks like your handwriting.
No,
I don't think that these witnesses exist. If not, why won't we know it? So Dee Dee says since she's appealing her conviction, she can't actually talk about them. And with that, our interview is over.
But we need to go ahead and take her now. Okay, thank you. Well, it was nice meeting you.
You too. Dee Dee may not have been willing to share her evidence of supposed witnesses with us, but she's going to get a chance to present her claims in court.
Is going to be back in court today. Dee Dee Moore will try to convince a judge to give her a retrial.
Will it be enough to get her murder conviction overturned? After years of filing motions to appeal her conviction, in July of 2023, Dee Dee finally gets another day in court.
Dee Dee Moore is back in a Tampa courtroom demanding a new trial.
Dee Dee tells the judge that she was framed by investigators who were paid off by those drug dealers that she alleged were doing business with Abraham Shakespeare.
They're being paid under the table because cocaine dealers can afford a lot.
The investigators denied Dee Dee's allegations.
I have never heard of anything of this corrupt drug network involving Abraham Shakespeare or corruption within either of our departments.
It's absurd. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
The judge denied Dee Dee's request for a new trial. But that wasn't the last time we heard from Dee Dee. More than 12 years after we first talked in Florida, we spoke to Dee Dee again on a call for prison. Tell me, how are you?
I'm fine. I've been working on my case and I've got my appeals out, so I'm waiting patiently.
How long have you been incarcerated in jail and in prison at this point?
14 years.
You still do not admit that you murdered Abe Shakespeare?
Absolutely not, I didn't.
14 years is a lot of time to think. Do you ever go back and think about Abe, about Abraham Shakespeare?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was wrong. There was no reason for him to pass away over money. But for them to lie in public and say that it took his money, the whole situation was so stupid.
You murdered him and you've taken zero responsibility. And you're saying, like, in past tense, that it's so sad he had to pass away. Abraham Shakespeare did not pass away. Abraham Shakespeare was shot at close range.
Everything they said in jury trials was not true.
I thought that you might,
Remorse?
more than a decade after our interview, have some remorse, some reflection about what had happened. That maybe there was a little bit of softness in your heart about Abraham and about your responsibility here.
There is plenty of softness in my heart.
She is still as adamant as she ever was that she was framed, that Abraham Shakespeare was murdered by someone else. She denies taking Abe's money. She denies doing anything wrong. Abraham Shakespeare not only lost his fortune and his life, he lost the chance to see his children grow up.
Everyone, thank you for coming to
The funeral was very emotional. It was a celebration of his life, but it was also very sad to learn that he was killed for his money. Was just something that everybody could not understand.
He was a kind-hearted person who genuinely wanted to help people. He helped tons of people in this city. He kept people from going into foreclosure. He paid light bills, phone bills. He honestly did that.
Imagine just spending your last $4, which is what Abraham Shakespeare did on those lottery tickets, putting your last money on a far-fetched dream. Abraham did a lot of good with some of his winnings. The favor wasn't returned to him.
He was a wonderful man.
Yeah.
He will be sorely missed.
I'll never forget, after they found him, I remember having a dream. And I remember in the dream telling Abraham, oh good, you can come with me now. And he kept saying, no, you'll be okay. That was enough for me to believe that I'll be okay. I really miss him today. I really just need to hear his voice today. I just want him, like, bring him back.
This is a true murder mystery. Emphasis on murder, emphasis on mystery.
I felt like Lita's murder case looks like a true crime story, but it goes a lot deeper.
Who would kill this woman? She wasn't robbed. Somebody came to the door with roses and shot her dead.
Was there a feeling that this had to be pretty calculated?
She was shot with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun.
No obvious suspect.
Was she at all concerned about the fact that she was in an interracial marriage and that this was a difficult time in the South?
It was not a welcoming place for a black woman to live.
She said, I'm done. I'm packing up my stuff.
I want you to see the puzzle. When I put it together and I show it to you, you'll never forget it.
Your wife's best friend has been murdered, and police are looking at you.
It's a chilly, drizzly winter Atlanta morning, and 35-year-old Lita McClinton is suddenly awakened.
It's around 8:15 in the morning, and she heard the doorbell ring. And she tightens up her rope and goes downstairs to open the door.
And I think she was probably not going to open it, but she looked through the keyhole and saw that the person had a box of flowers.
There was a man standing at the door, holding a long white box of long stem roses that had a big, thick pink ribbon around it.
So she receives the flowers, thinking that this is a delivery.
She was really excited. She thought that it was a gift from one of her friends.
In a sea of red brick townhouses, Lita's white one stands out. Her best friend Poppy and 3-year-old daughter have spent the night, and they are still in bed upstairs, just waking up.
Poppy hears her say, "Good morning," to the man at the door.
The flower delivery man produces a handgun. He fires a shot.
She actually put the box of roses in front of her face. The second shot went right through the center of her head, and she fell with a large thud.
Lita's friend Poppy was upstairs with her toddler. And right away, she grabbed her daughter and hid her into a closet and said, "You gotta be quiet, quiet as a mouse." She didn't know if the gunman was gonna come for her. Lita's neighbor hears the shots, then sees the guy running like a bat out of hell, just booking it out of the complex, and he calls 911.
The first police officer is only a few blocks away, and he gets the call, and so Lita's been shot. Lita's mother called her husband. When they went to the hospital, they were put in a separate...
Intentions, not murder. So when the shooting happened right here, neighbors were shocked and on edge.
Sullivan was found in the doorway of her townhouse, shot twice in the head.
It's pretty surprising that in this area, those kinds of things probably wouldn't happen.
How did you learn that Lita had been killed?
I ran to the TV because I heard Sullivan on Slayton Drive.
Police say a box of roses was found near her body. The gunman apparently posed as a delivery man.
And I said, "Oh my God, that's Lita."
Detectives on the scene found a bullet fragment, 2 shell casings, and the box of roses.
2 gunshots from a 9mm penetrated the box. The weapon was never found. To this day, it's never been found.
In this case, you had just a minor amount of evidence.
At the time, it was the top story on the news, and law enforcement officers felt a great deal of pressure in order to bring Lita's killer to justice.
For years, Lita's case was cold, buried underneath the weight of unanswered questions and fading memories.
I'm Deb Miller Landau, and I just wrote a book called A Devil Went Down to Georgia about the murder of Lita McClinton Sullivan. I covered this story for Atlanta Magazine back in 2004, and the more people I talked to, the more that I researched, the more I felt like I began to know Lita. So talking about the day that she died feels personal.
The case was also personal to Clint Rucker, the prosecutor. When I came to Atlanta to meet up with him, I learned that one of his passions is puzzles, working from the outside in, which also translates to solving homicides.
Where do you begin? How do you start to connect?
When I'm putting together a puzzle, not only in real life, but also a murder case, I make an assessment about what it is I'm working with. I start to identify pieces of the puzzle that are foundational.
Lida's murder case looks like a true crime story, but it goes a lot deeper. It's a story about love and loss and greed.
Lida had been reared in Atlanta's black elite.
You know, on the surface, she was living an Atlanta dream.
A prosperous upbringing.
A very prosperous upbringing. The expectations for her life were pretty high.
Black women have had to be exceptional in order to be seen. And that was the case then, and I think it's still the case now.
One thing seems certain, a murder of this kind is personal.
Was there a feeling that this had to be pretty calculated?
Police knew almost immediately Lida Sullivan was the intended victim.
Who would kill this woman? She wasn't robbed. Somebody came to the door with roses and shot her dead.
Atlanta had its fair share of crime, but this was most certainly one of the highest profile cases that got reported in the news.
Sullivan was shot twice in the head. A box of roses found next to her body.
Using a flower delivery man and shooting her, it was something that just kind of stuck out to me.
Atlanta, Georgia, billed as a vibrant melting pot, a destination for creatives. But if you grew up in Georgia in the 1970s, as I did, you know this was a very different place then. One still emerging from the dark shadows of segregation and racial tensions. What was 1970s Atlanta like when she was sort of coming along?
We've got African Americans that are kind of ascending into really prominent positions. Lida also is ascending because her parents are part of this movement.
Lida's parents, Emory and Joanne McClinton, were both power players, movers and shakers in Atlanta.
Emory McClinton was on the State Board of Transportation. Joanne McClinton was a member of the Georgia legislature.
Joanne will tell you stories about being in really interpersonal meetings with Dr. King.
She was the Maynard Jackson's campaign manager when he ran for mayor.
I think the McClintons had high expectations for who Lida would become. Lida Sullivan was a true daughter of Atlanta.
She was just a gem, very, very proper.
And she had grown up in a world of cotillions, so she really was sort of that classic upper crust black person growing up in Atlanta.
She knew where she was going.
She had a great sense of style.
And absolutely charming.
After high school, she went on to Spelman College. Her parents sort of hoped that she would enter the political arena like they were, but she was very much into fashion. She was working at a boutique at Lenox Square, and in walks this guy who had unruly curls and weird glasses and just immediately saw Lida and was taken with her.
Fresh out of college, 24-year-old Lida is smitten with James, Jim Sullivan. He's a bit older, 35, and he's also white.
He showered her with gifts. He just completely showered her with attention.
He comes in, he dazzles her. What did you learn about him?
I learned that what he saw was a fantasy in Lida. I think he looked at her as a young, very attractive, very smart African-American female.
Another big difference between them is class. Lida has been raised in Atlanta's high society and Jim on Boston's gritty South Side.
He grew up in a very middle to lower middle class environment.
He went to Holy Cross College, got a bachelor's degree in economics.
He always wanted more for himself. He always wanted to be a rich person. but it didn't seem like that was in the cards. He was an accountant. He was working hard, but he really wasn't getting ahead.
But life is about to change for Jim Sullivan when he inherits a thriving liquor distributorship from his uncle, worth millions of dollars.
Crown Beverages was worth around $3.2 million. Jim had become a wealthy man. So when the McClintons met Jim for the first time, they were like, who is this guy? He had this kind of manner that was very uncouth and brash, and they were sort of mystified about what their daughter saw in him. I mean, I think the only thing they had in common was that he was Catholic and they were Catholic as well. But everything else was complete polar opposites.
Another concern, of course, was race. Remember, this is the 70s. Even though the country is watching color barriers slipping away on the hit show The Jeffersons, with Primetime's first interracial couple.
Your parents have never gotten over the fact that I'm white.
That's because you never got over being white.
At that time, this was unusual.
Georgia's anti-miscegenation laws that forbade blacks and whites to marry had only been repealed 10 years earlier.
Still, despite their obvious differences, Jim Sullivan pops the question to Lita.
So the McClintons were like, you cannot marry this man.
They felt like Lita was really making a mistake and was kind of caught up in the exuberance of this relationship.
Despite her parents' strong objections, Lita and Jim are engaged. But on the eve of her wedding, Jim drops a bomb.
He tells Lita that he has been married before and that he has 4 children. Lita was shocked.
And then, the very same night, Jim Sullivan blindsides his bride-to-be again.
He whips out a piece of paper and he says, can you sign this? And then she looks down and sees that he's drawn up a prenuptial agreement. And she's like, what is this?
Apparently determined to protect his newfound wealth, Sullivan surprises Lita with a prenup, which says that in the event of a divorce, she would walk away with virtually nothing. She's reluctant, but the cake is ordered, the flowers are ready, so Lita signs the agreement and ties the knot anyway.
Lita got married in 1976. It was a small ceremony in Macon, Georgia. Joanne McClinton would later describe that as the worst day of her life.
The newlyweds settle some 80 miles south of Atlanta near Jim's business in Macon. It's a world away from Atlanta. But Lita agrees to give up her current job and her income and become full-time Mrs. Jim Sullivan.
They bought a house in Shirley Hills, a very affluent, very white part of Macon. Joanne and Emery McClinton feared for their daughter. Being part of an interracial couple in Macon, Georgia in the 1970s would have been extraordinarily challenging. The neighbors were like, you have the gall to bring a black wife to Shirley Hills. People threw garbage on their doorstep.
The out-and-out racism had to be tough for Lita. But she moves forward and makes some new connections and friends, including Yvette Miller.
When Lita and Yvette occasionally go out to eat, she notices something a bit curious.
We'd go out to lunch at a nice restaurant, and she couldn't pay the bill. And I would end up picking up the check.
And they were a wealthy couple.
They were very wealthy.
Then one Christmas season, a card arrives in the mail addressed to Jim. Lita opens it, and what she discovers will make her question everything. Lita and Jim Sullivan's first few months of marriage seemed to be going well.
They were both intelligent, both attractive, definitely upper class, high society.
But just beneath the surface, there's some obvious cracks.
They seemed to be loving at first.
At first?
He was not that nice to her, and he was not that kind to her.
Was he brusque? Was he brash?
He was a bit arrogant. Even though he had all of these resources, he did not, in my opinion, take care of his wife.
Friends say that the once generous millionaire has suddenly become a miser.
He was notoriously cheap.
He would wear his dead uncle's clothes around the house. He would use the sheath from the dry cleaning as saran wrap in the kitchen. He didn't want Lita to work, but he kept her on a very tight allowance where he gave her $150 a week.
Did she express any discontentment with her marriage?
When we were at those restaurants, Jim just does not give me enough money to take care of me and the house. You know, she clearly was not happy.
Was there talk of infidelity?
Lita had several instances where she questioned whether or not her husband was actually having an affair.
One day she finds a long blonde hair in their master bathroom, and she asks Jim about it, and he says, "I don't know what you're talking about." They got into this cycle of, she accused him of philandering. He would deny it, and then he would buy her sort of an expensive jewelry apology.
Then, during the holidays one year, Lita makes another stunning discovery.
A Christmas card came addressed to Jim. She opened it. A woman wrote in something like, missing your kisses. The woman's return address was on the envelope, so Lita went and spoke to her, and the woman said that she had been having an affair with Jim.
Lita is distraught and goes home to be with her parents in Atlanta. But her husband manages to lure her back, increasing her weekly allowance in a now post-nuptial agreement.
Now it's $300 instead of $150 a week, but it still shows that all of their assets belong to Jim.
That's right, the successful business, Lita's Mercedes, multiple properties, even her jewelry, still belong to her husband in the event of a divorce.
But in an attempt at reconciliation, Lita signs the postnup.
Just a few months after Lita signs that agreement, without Lita knowing, Sullivan decides to sell Crown Beverages for $5 million.
And that's not all. He tells her they're moving to Palm Beach, Florida.
Lita was in shock.
She had any clue that he was going to whistle her down to Palm Beach.
But Lita's new Florida home, located a stone's throw from what would become Mar-a-Lago, is more elaborate than she ever would have imagined. Called Casa Alita, it's a 17,000 square foot mansion with 8 oceanfront bedrooms.
It was just unbelievable.
When you went to Jim's home, you go through this tunnel and you would be at the beach. It's your own private beach.
But for Lita, everything that glitters isn't exactly gold.
James Sullivan very much wanted to integrate himself into the upper echelons of society, and his aspirations did not include Lita's participation.
It was not a welcoming place for a black woman to live. And when he found out that to sort of scale the level of social plateau he was looking at in Palm Beach, having a black wife was a serious impediment to that.
She was left out of some affairs, and she really became upset.
So even though they had money, this is a moneyed crowd, didn't really matter though.
He was barely rich compared to Palm Beach.
Did he want to be in that crowd?
Oh yes, he wanted to, be accepted as one of the rich and famous.
It doesn't take long before Jim starts to flirt with other women.
And it's at a cocktail party that one particularly elegant Palm Beach woman catches Sullivan's eye.
Jim sees Suki Rogers, who is a Korean-born socialite.
She was telegenic. She had a spicy personality. I think a man like Jim Sullivan could not help but be intrigued by this beautiful woman.
They started dating. He's still married to Lita.
By now, the Sullivans have been married nearly 10 years, but things are about to explode.
Lita finds women's lingerie in their master bed. It's the bra that broke the camel's back.
She said, I'm done. I'm packing up my stuff, and I'm going back home.
Lita arrives back in Atlanta. The very next day, she files for divorce from Jim.
But Sullivan fights Lita every step of the way, and the divorce drags on.
Did she seem concerned, worried, nervous about her breakup?
What I detected was she was excited and she was cutting the cord and leaving Jim alone. She wanted her life back.
While Lita is looking forward to a new life of freedom, she can't be happy about the prospect of leaving her marriage with virtually nothing. No career, no Palm Beach mansion, no Buckhead townhouse, and $2,500 a month in alimony for 3 years. So Lita is going to divorce court, determined to fight for what she believes she deserves.
All she wanted was a reasonable financial settlement so that she could kind of go on with her life.
January 16th, 1987 was set up to be a pivotal day in the lives of Lita and Jim Sullivan.
A judge was going to decide whether or not to throw out the post-nuptial agreement.
She might get as much as close to $1 million in cash and assets.
The morning of January 16th, Lita Sullivan, she'd lose her life that day in a murder.
With Lita out of the picture, Jim Sullivan stands to gain the property that they had and retain control over all his money.
Sullivan was the main suspect.
That is, until a treasure trove of secret recordings of Lita's private conversations are uncovered, taking this investigation in a whole new direction.
And police are looking at you.
You know, you make a big circle and you put everybody in it that's close to Lita. Everybody's a suspect. But the first one would be the husband.
The first and obvious suspect was James Sullivan, who stood to gain everything from her death, all the property, all the monies, and who was contesting the divorce.
Detectives went down to speak to him in Palm Beach, and they put him through a polygraph.
Jim Sullivan not only passes the polygraph, but there's something else. He has an alibi that puts him nearly 700 miles away from the crime scene.
James Sullivan was actually in Palm Beach at the time of Lita's murder.
When you first look at it, it looks pretty cut and dry. When you interview all the people involved, everybody points in one direction, towards the husband. But when you sit down and look at the facts, I'm not so sure that the husband is the person that committed the crime.
Nothing surfaced in the early stages of the investigation that implicated Jim Sullivan in the murder.
Sullivan is cooperating with authorities, and during his interview with detectives, he mentions the name of his friend, Marvin Marable.
At the time of Lita's death, Marvin and James Sullivan had a very close relationship.
Remember, Marvin Marable is married to Lita's best friend, Poppy, who was in the Buckhead townhouse with her 3-year-old daughter the morning that Lita was murdered. But back before the shooting, the friendship hadn't always sat well with Marvin.
When Lita moved back to Atlanta, they started, hanging out together.
So she's disillusioned by her relationship. Did her failed relationship have any impact on your relationship?
Well, from the standpoint of them, being together all the time and going out, yeah.
Commiserating.
Oh, absolutely. Certainly didn't help. And I can understand her being there for her friend, but, sometimes you can go overboard, which is what happened in our relationship.
Marable, a former New York State trooper turned entrepreneur, says Lita would often spend hours at his home with Poppy. And it was during this time, he says, coincidentally or not, that his own marriage began to unravel.
I found a letter where Poppy was planning to file for divorce.
So she was planning to file for divorce without your knowledge?
Oh, yeah,
That had to be a shocker.
it was.
So then you decided to try something a little questionable after that.
You know, I have a background in law enforcement. I don't see it as questionable. It's your own telephone in your own house. I put a recorder on the, people call it a tap, on the phone, and I started recording conversations.
In the house phone.
Mm-hmm. On the house phone.
He began listening to Poppy and Lita's conversations and ended up recording more than 300 hours.
In doing those very personal conversations between girlfriends, Marvin Marable learns that there may be some information that James Sullivan might be interested in learning that will be helpful for him in his divorce case.
He tells Sullivan about the tapes and what's on them, specifically Lita's post-divorce plans.
And soon enough, the two disgruntled husbands are conspiring to get the best of their soon-to-be ex-wives in divorce court.
Marvin Marable travels down to Palm Beach under a false name, and the two men listen to the tapes, and Marvin says, "I'm not going to record anymore," and Jim says, no, keep recording.
Was there talk of money?
Yeah, he offered $30,000.
Jim says to Marvin, if the judge decides to honor the postnuptial agreement, he's going to give Marvin $30,000 for the use of the information on the tapes.
What kinds of things did Lita talk about that could be helpful to either one of you?
You know, there were some guys that, you know, she would talk to, but she was legally separated.
But then, just a few days after Marvin and Jim's secret meeting at Casa Elita,
Poppy and Lita somehow discovered the recording device.
How did they react?
It wasn't nice. She filed for divorce the next day.
She was angry.
She was very angry.
Lita was upset too, so upset that she reported Marvin to the authorities, and he was charged with possession of an eavesdropping device. So when police questioned Sullivan about who might have a motive to murder his wife, he tells them to look no further than Marvin Marable.
and sure enough, only a few days after Lita's death, Marvin is being questioned by the Atlanta Police Department about Lita's murder.
I go down for the interview, and the first thing they did is read me my rights. And from there on, it was just a nightmare. I was a prime suspect.
You have a law enforcement background, so you knew what police
So I knew that I was being followed. I could pick the investigators, police, could pick them out all the time. Jim had mentioned my name to them. He said, look at Marvin Marable.
This was serious stuff.
Oh, yeah.
How worried were you?
I was very worried.
Joanne and Emery McClinton were beyond devastated. Their eldest daughter was dead. Just 3 days after Lita's murder, they held a funeral.
Days dissolve into months, and authorities are no closer to finding Lita Sullivan's murderer.
The case is just sort of growing colder and colder by the minute.
And while Marvin Marable might have been angry at Lita for pressing those charges against him for eavesdropping, there was no evidence he was responsible for her death.
I know that people get wrongly accused, wrongly convicted, and so the only saving grace is the fact that I knew I was innocent.
By process of elimination is you can determine the pieces that don't fit.
And just eliminate them.
The way in which we eliminated Marvin Marable as a suspect. There was just not enough to connect him directly to the crime itself.
As for that eavesdropping device charge, Marvin was put on probation, which he completed, and then he was exonerated. But on those recordings Marable made, Lida had talked about other men, something that her soon-to-be ex-husband Sullivan pointed out to police.
He made allegations that she was participating in extramarital affairs, and that perhaps this was the action of, you know, a disgruntled boyfriend.
We have a lot of major players. At this point in the investigation, we have a lot of suspects.
One of the first men police question is a professional athlete.
Lida and him had been friends when she was in Palm Beach. The police quickly found out that he was in prison for drug possession.
That athlete is behind bars when Lida is killed, so clearly he can't be the trigger man. Then investigators turn their sights to a prominent Atlanta businessman.
And he and Lida had been childhood friends, and they sort of rekindled their friendship. And they realized that he had no motive, and they found nothing that connected him.
Authorities also take a hard look at another suitor who had taken Lida to dinner the night before her death. And get this, had also given her 2 roses.
The suspect was a man named Bob Daniel, and Bob had had an incident a couple months before the murder where, in a drunken rage, he came to Lida's house, smashed his car into the garage, and as the cops were taking him away, he said, "I'm gonna kill that." So, serious red flag.
But that lead didn't go anywhere either.
Bob had just had quadruple bypass surgery. You know, the police ultimately decided that Bob had nothing to do with it.
It's the unknowing that makes it so difficult. And to know that there are individuals who may be walking around now planning and plotting to do the same thing to somebody else is abhorrent to me.
I remember having the impression it was like a festering wound for them.
The McClintons want to draw attention to a $25,000 reward in the case.
The cause of finding justice for Lida became their obsession, became their passion.
The reward is for the arrest and conviction of those individuals responsible for our daughter's murder.
To catch Lida's killer, the Atlanta Police Department assigns 2 veteran detectives to the case.
If Lieutenant Walker bears a resemblance to actor Billy D. Williams, Welcome Harris reminds one of Columbo, the dogged, disheveled detective of television fame.
Building a murder case was like making a mosaic. You know, you get a shiny piece of glass here, a gem there. You put it together and you hope that from it emerges the shimmering image of a killer.
This particular case deals with what I consider to be high society. It contains a little bit of everything. Intrigue, mystery.
These days, a lot of murders are solved using DNA technology, ring camera technology. But back then, it was detective work.
She was shot with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun.
Most important thing found at the crime scene was the roses.
They canvassed all the area flower shops and quickly found that the roses had been purchased at the Botany Bay flower shop.
They interviewed the worker in there, and he told them that this guy came in about 8 o'clock and bought these roses and paid in cash and then left. And he was in a small car.
The florist gave a description of the man buying the flowers and another man who was waiting in the car.
So detectives know they're looking for at least 2 men.
Until yet another person is described to police, that flower delivery man who had looked Lida's neighbor right in the eye.
There was a next-door neighbor of Lida's, lived over on the right side of her condo. He lived there. His name was Bob Christensen.
He actually gave a description of the flower delivery man as a Caucasian, middle-aged man.
They went down to the police station and worked with a police artist and got sketches. As the sketches were being completed, the officers were realizing, obviously, that the shooter was not Jim Sullivan and that the other individuals were all 3 distinct individuals. They didn't look anything like each other, so therefore we knew 3 people were involved.
For for investigators, this has all the earmarks of only one thing: murder for hire.
All the evidence pointed to a hitman showing up at the front door, posing as a flower delivery man, and firing a gunshot into Lita's head.
With investigators now exploring the possibility that Lita was murdered by a hired gunman, another critical piece of evidence comes to light: a mysterious phone call.
And what they found was that on the same day that Lita was murdered, about an hour after the actual shooting, there was a collect phone call that was placed from a payphone right outside of Atlanta, Georgia.
Was this a call from the killer?
I don't know about you, I haven't had a collect call from a payphone, so as a cop you probably go, I wonder if that's connected.
And a tip from a woman 700 miles away may just be the big break investigators have been waiting for.
I said, anyone knows that if you wanted to get a woman to answer the door, all you would have to do is take flowers to the door.
This was a huge puzzle of a case.
A hitman showing up at the front door, posing as a flower delivery man, firing a gunshot into Lita's head.
How did your puzzle-solving skills come into play?
You figure out what fits and what doesn't fit.
I want everyone listening to this to know that I am absolutely innocent.
The loss of a daughter.
They still don't have a murder weapon.
But they do have witnesses.
Do you know anybody that can possibly take care of my problem for me? Because I need some help here.
Anyone knows that if you wanted to get a woman to answer the door, all you would have to do is take flowers to the door.
She suggested the flowers.
She suggested the flowers.
You actually brought in a doorbell. Why?
To have that sense of what Lita Sullivan experienced right before her murder. She's about to meet her maker.
It's a deadly delivery of a dozen pink roses. 35-year-old Lita McClinton Sullivan opens her front door and is suddenly gunned down.
On the year anniversary of Lita's death, there are no named suspects. They still don't have a murder weapon. They don't have a hitman. They don't have a paper trail that ties Jim or anyone else to a hit.
But that's about to change when they get Jim Sullivan's phone records.
On the same day that Lita was murdered, about an hour or so after the actual shooting, there was a collect phone call to James Sullivan's home in Palm Beach, Florida.
It turns out to be from a rest stop in Suwanee, Georgia, maybe 30 or 40 miles from Buckhead. Using a phone call to call another state, that opens up federal jurisdiction. In this case, that's the FBI.
We believed the phone call from Suwanee rest stop to his home in Palm Beach, Florida, was sufficient indication that a contract hitter may have called him after doing the job.
Enter Special Agent John Kingston, who takes a particular interest in that phone call and a whole slew of other calls Jim Sullivan made and received around the time of Lita's murder.
I got a whole year's worth, 6 months before the murder to 6 months after the murder.
Kingston notices a few calls, and one of them was to Bob Christensen, Lita's neighbor. When Kingston talks to Bob, he finds out that Jim had called Bob 3 days before the murder.
Sullivan said, had he seen anything suspicious around Lita's townhouse?
And Bob finds it strange. He hasn't talked to Jim in over a year.
Bob Christensen shares something else with Agent Kingston. On the same day Jim Sullivan called him, 3 days before the fatal flower delivery, Lita heard a loud knock on her door at 5 or 6 in the morning. It was so early and so unnerving, she didn't answer it.
So that made the call that he got from Jim even more suspicious.
Kingston also finds that a call is made between Jim's house and a Howard Johnson's motel in Atlanta, just a couple of miles from Lita's house. This is really strange. One thing that he's learned about Jim is that he's not a Hojo's kind of guy. So he goes to the Howard Johnsons and asks if he can look through the records.
They gave me the shoebox with all the registration cards, and I pick out 3 that I thought, well, these are awfully interesting. So I said, do you guys have the phone records? They said, yeah, sure we do. And I'm thinking, boy, these people keep really good records, and they keep them for a long time, and I'm really glad. They bring me the phone records for January 13th. I'm flipping through them, and all of a sudden I see 305 Palm Beach, South Florida area code. And I'm pretty sure it's Jim's number. And so I check my records real quick, and I go, yep, that's his number. And then I look, and I said, oh, look, it's from 518. That's one of the 3 cards I pulled out. Well, it just so happens I have a copy of it here. And one of the things that imparts is 3 individuals checked into the room. The individual who actually registered used the name Johnny Furr, but 3 individuals is important to me because I think 3 people involved in the crime. They put their car down as a Toyota 85 with a North Carolina plate. We believe that a Toyota was the getaway car for the murder. So there's 2 coincidences already.
But remember, these motel records are from January 13th. Lita was murdered 3 days later on the 16th. Special Agent Kingston is beginning to surmise that the killers may have tried and failed to get to her once before.
What I believe it to be is the killers having come down 3 days before the actual murder was committed, knocking on her door, her not answering it, and them having to stop and regroup and figure out what plan B is going to be. So I am in love with this registration card and becomes the focal point of my life for the next several months.
Kingston's next move is to locate this so-called Johnny Furr with the North Carolina license plate.
And to my surprise, there are 150 John or Johnny Furrs in North Carolina. But to my great surprise, 115 of these 150 are in a very small circle in North Carolina between the 3 cities of Albemarle, Concord, and Kannapolis.
They're going to knock on every door and find this Johnny Furr. Of course, they're coming from Georgia, and anytime the FBI goes and investigates in another state, they need that state's approval. And just as they're about to get to the state border, their boss calls them and says, North Carolina's denying you entry, and they'll take it from here.
And that pretty much kills my case. that kills my case.
Yeah, soon after that, Agent Kingston is transferred to another job, and that whole investigation just sort of fades away. Meantime, in Palm Beach, Jim and Suki are living the high life. So with Lita out of the picture, Jim is free to marry Suki, which he does 8 months after Lita's murder.
He's thinking that he's the cat's meow. Eating in restaurants in Palm Beach, going to parties, got another attractive woman on his arm.
Jim drives around town in a Rolls Royce and gets into a fender bender and has to go to traffic court. Jim says to the judge, well, you've misunderstood. I wasn't even driving that day. Suki was driving. So the judge says, we're going to throw it out. However, the cop who was on the scene catches wind, and he says Suki wasn't even in the car that day. It was Jim driving alone. So now Jim has perjured himself, as has Suki.
Jim ultimately got convicted of perjury, was given a year probation and a year of home confinement.
Suki Sullivan also receives a year of probation.
Suki's freaking out. When she gets charged with perjury on his behalf, she's like, I'm done with this. Suki files for divorce from Jim. And the trial that follows is the juiciest, craziest gossip in town. So when it's Suki's turn to testify, she drops a bomb.
Did he talk to you
about his former wife, Lita.
Yes.
Tell me what it was he said to you about Lita.
You can hear a pin drop. It's a big moment. After 33 months of marriage, Suki files for divorce from Jim.
Not surprisingly, it's another disputed divorce. But what might have been typical testimony about alimony takes a sudden turn in court.
Tell me what it was he said to you about Lita.
He hired someone to work with her.
I'm sorry?
He hired someone to work with her.
She claimed that he confessed to her that he had Lita killed.
This became a bombshell in the investigation of the murder of Lita Sullivan.
Suki Sullivan's divorce testimony may be big news for the FBI, but it has zero impact on the divorce judgment, which favors her husband, Jim Sullivan, in nearly every way.
His divorce was complete, but his life with turmoil was just beginning.
The opulent ocean-facing Palm Beach Palace may look like something out of The Great Gatsby, but while we watched, a new chapter in a crime story was unfolding.
We develop information here at WSB. There's going to be a raid on Jim Sullivan's Palm Beach mansion, and that is the biggest break in the Lita Sullivan case since the murder itself.
Investigators from the FBI, Atlanta Police, and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation were on the grounds of a mansion identified as that of James Sullivan.
All of a sudden, Jim Sullivan is clearly in the crosshairs of federal authorities.
They got a tip that Jim, now a convicted felon, has guns in the house. Of course, you're not allowed to have guns if you're a convicted felon. So they put together a sweeping affidavit to get a search warrant.
We did see a number of guns loaded into a car and this box carried out.
When they found the guns, he was in violation of his probation, and so he went to jail for 9 months.
All this time, a federal grand jury has been convening in Atlanta.
They've got what they found in the mansion. They got what they found in the phone records. They've got Suki Sullivan. They've got the neighbors. What they don't have are the identities of the hit team. There's a problem, though.
We, the federal government, have a 5-year statute of limitations, which is going to be up on January 16th of '92.
With 5 or 6 days to go before it expired, the U.S. Attorney made a bold decision. We're going to take our best shot with what we got right now, so they indict Jim Sullivan.
Jim Sullivan is indicted on multiple counts of arranging Lita's murder for hire through interstate phone calls.
Millionaire James V. Sullivan is on trial in connection with an alleged murder for hire plot. Here he arrives for the first day of trial testimony.
It was a trial that transfixed Atlanta. I mean, it was something we were covering on basically a daily basis, but we couldn't have it on camera because it's federal court.
It looks like the family is finally going to have some accountability for the murder of their daughter, Lita.
The prosecution suggests the killers were calling Sullivan from the rest stop to say the job was done. The defense suggests otherwise.
Jim Sullivan is lawyered up with the best criminal defense lawyers that you can find anywhere in Atlanta and maybe in the whole country.
There is no evidence at this point in this case who placed that call or whether that call was placed by anyone connected with the crime.
The prosecutor spent 2 weeks telling their side of the story.
Suki, the woman he married months after Lita's death, delivered some of the most dramatic testimony the jury has heard.
They build what they feel like is a really strong case.
And then a big bombshell hits.
The judge says, I'm forced to dismiss this case for lack of evidence.
Judge Marvin Shube ruled that, in effect, even if Sullivan may have been involved in the murder for hire, the government fell short in proving the phone calls related to the murder.
This is one of the most difficult decisions I had to make because I firmly believe in the jury system.
And then he looks at Jim and he says, you've been acquitted.
is over.
The family at that point, I guess, is just sort of at a loss. How devastating was that for them?
They felt like the justice system had let them down.
I was not expecting this. It's extremely difficult.
The system today is weighed in the favor of the defense.
James Sullivan seems to have gotten away with murder.
But Lita's parents aren't giving up.
They file a wrongful death suit in Palm Beach, Florida, and they win.
We, the jury, return the following verdict.
The jury deems that Jim is guilty of wrongful death.
Total damages of the estate of Lita McClinton Sullivan, $4 million.
But Sullivan is able to hide his assets and not pay any of the civil judgment.
Jim Sullivan appealed their civil judgment, and he won by having the Florida court say that they had filed it after the Florida statute of limitations.
Once again, Jim has wiggled out of any responsibility, and the family is left dumbfounded.
Until
a call is received out of the blue.
A young woman comes forward. It proved to be the break in the case that everyone was looking for.
"11 years have gone by since Lita Sullivan was gunned down on her doorstep when a tip comes in from a town 700 miles away.
A call is received out of the blue, and the individual calling is an attorney in Beaumont, Texas. He has a receptionist whose name is Belinda Trahan, who has told him a very unusual story about her boyfriend, Tony Harwood.
Belinda and Tony lived together in Albemarle, North Carolina. And he was a long-distance truck driver for North American Van Lines.
He basically drove a moving truck.
Belinda tells her boss about a time that Tony came home from a long-haul trucking trip and said that a rich white man in Florida offered to pay him to, quote, take care of his black wife in Georgia. At the time, Belinda didn't believe it. She thought he must be cheating on her.
Belinda thought that it was Tony just trying to get out of town and go down to Atlanta to the strip bars.
Until he took her to meet this rich white guy in a diner somewhere, and he got a wad full of money.
She says he sits down briefly in their booth and gives Tony Harwood the balance owed for the hit on the man's wife.
Belinda Trahan tells her boss that soon after this bizarre trip, she broke up with Tony Harwood and moved to Texas. But now, 11 years later, she says that he mysteriously reached out to her again, asking her to meet him at a nearby truck stop.
She's afraid that he may commit harm to her.
And it's this new tip from Belinda Trahan that sends Georgia authorities to the Lone Star State, turning up the heat on an otherwise cold case.
Georgia Bureau of Investigator Agent John Lang takes a detective from the Atlanta Police Department and goes down to Texas to talk to Belinda.
She was with Tony when they met this mysterious man at this diner that they were meeting at. We wanted to show her a lineup of pictures in hopes that she could pick Sullivan out of it.
And she takes her pink fingernail and taps right on Jim Sullivan's face and says, "This is the man."
My plan of attack was to get some recordings with her and Tony. So we got her to get in touch with Tony again.
She's talking to him and trying to coax information out of him, knowing John Lang is listening on her end. And Tony gives enough information that places him at the scene at the time.
We had the phone calls with Tony. She picked Jim Sullivan out of the lineup, but there was still more investigation to do. We really didn't know who Tony Harwood was.
John Lang knows that Tony worked at North American Van Lines. So he calls up North American Van Lines and he says, hey, you don't happen to have your records from 11 years ago? And the guy says, yeah, there's some boxes full of files up in a musty attic. You're more than welcome to go poke around.
We went up into a hot attic and opened the first box that I went through. And about the third document I looked at was Jim Sullivan. His address was on it, Palm Beach, Florida. His signature was on it, and Tony Harwood's signature was on it.
He finds a bill of lading showing that Tony Harwood moved furniture for Jim Sullivan 2 months before the murder. And it's the paper trail he needs. It's like the jackpot.
Astounding. I don't know any other way to explain it. I mean, open this box and like the third record I look at, here it is. I mean, it just like it was meant to be.
On a Sunday morning in April of 1998, John Lang and local authorities go knock on Tony's door in Albemarle, North Carolina. Tony answers the door.
And he said, you know, I've been waiting on you boys for a long time.
They take Tony to the Albemarle police station. Lang interviews Tony for 3 hours in this tiny room. But at the end of the day, Tony admits to taking money from Jim, $25,000, to take care of Lita. He also tells the detectives that he wasn't the one to pull the trigger, but that he was there the day of the murder.
He went through the whole case, and throughout the interview, he incriminated himself even more. I mean, admitted that he was there. He knew what happened. So he was arrested for murder of Lita Sullivan, and we took him back to Atlanta that day.
After Tony's arrest, things moved pretty quickly.
We are here today to announce the issuance of a warrant for the arrest of James V. Sullivan.
They got enough to get Sullivan, and now boom, Sullivan hears of this and blows. He takes off.
We have reason to believe that he's outside the country.
He's just gone, vanished.
Investigators say he could be anywhere.
He is nowhere to be found.
We certainly do not know where Mr. Sullivan is. We have reason to believe that he's outside the country.
More than a decade after his wife Lita was murdered, Jim Sullivan seems to be playing a game of catch me if you can with authorities.
There is an international manhunt for James Sullivan.
Well, Jim had moved to Costa Rica, actually bought a home there. In 1998, after an arrest warrant was issued for him, he immediately, like that night, went to Panama.
If you have any information concerning James Sullivan, you should contact the nearest U.S. embassy or consulate.
We didn't know exactly where he had flown from Panama, and we didn't know exactly where he had gone.
His trail goes cold.
They put him on Interpol, and it was just cold.
They've tapped phone lines, anybody that he might have called, and he's called no one, not even his mother.
There was a few tips that came in. The tips are just dead ends.
The McClintons, they're dumbfounded that this guy could, get away again.
But in late 1999, with Sullivan still completely off the grid, the heartbroken Emery and Joanne McClinton do get some good news.
Last week came this, a court decision reinstating a $4 million judgment against Jim Sullivan in connection with a wrongful death case brought in effect by Lita's estate.
Lita's family and law enforcement officials hope that a renewed hunt for Sullivan's money will help smoke him out.
Where you find Sullivan's money, you're going to find him close by.
But even this goes nowhere.
Fast forward to 2002. There is no sign of Jim Sullivan.
We tried every effort in our arsenal to try and locate him, to put him on the FBI's wanted list, but to also put him on the top 10 list, which is very unusual. You don't get on the top 10 list very easily. Then we also featured him on America's Most Wanted.
The most recent picture we have of Sullivan is at least 5 years old, so the FBI age-enhanced this photo, which may bear a closer resemblance to Sullivan's appearance today. If you recognize James Sullivan from either of these photographs, call us now at 1-800-CRIME-TV.
A man sees America's Most Wanted on television and goes, I know that guy. He lives in my condo complex in Chiam, Thailand. And sure enough, he calls the authorities.
He went to Panama, to Venezuela, and eventually to Thailand, where he got a beachfront condo.
He spends his days walking on the beach, sitting by the pool, occasionally playing tennis, as though no other troubles in the world. The Thai police knock on Jim Sullivan's door on July 2nd, 2002, and say, you're under arrest. The McClintons can hardly believe it.
Individuals behind us.
Almost as soon as Jim Sullivan is arrested for murder, Tony Harwood, who has continued to deny being the trigger man, agrees to a plea deal.
Tony kind of sees the writing on the wall.
Harwood just decided that he would plead guilty, the negotiated plea for manslaughter, and that, in turn, that he would testify against Jim Sullivan.
It took 2 years, but he finally was extradited back to Atlanta in 2004.
He got off the plane. He was wearing a single shoe because he had such terrible gout in his foot. But he gets off and gets taken to Fulton County Jail. And there's this sort of cumulative sigh of relief.
To be clear, Sullivan being tried for murder in Georgia is not double jeopardy. For one thing, it is a state case, and the previous one was a federal case, and that specifically was for arranging Lita's murder for hire over the phone.
The elected district attorney appoints me, along with a couple of other lawyers, to prosecute the case.
This was a huge puzzle of a case.
Right.
How did your puzzle-solving skills come into play?
There's no cutting corners, and you spread the pieces out, and then you figure out what fits and what doesn't fit. And that's kind of what the prosecution of James Sullivan was like. It was putting together all these different pieces so that we could make sure that the prosecution of the case was done accurately and with integrity.
What concerned you going into this trial?
He was rich. He was a white male. He had escaped the federal authorities before, and he had two of the best criminal defense attorneys representing him.
They are sharp, and if they can find a way out, they're going to find a way out.
There will not be one shred of physical evidence that links Jim Sullivan to this crime.
Jim has eluded justice so many times that there's a real palpable fear that he's going to get away with it, that he's going to elude justice again.
After nearly 20 years, Jim Sullivan is finally on trial here in Fulton County for the murder of his wife, Lita. For her heartbroken parents, this day couldn't come soon enough.
The pain, believe it or not, it increases. It does not decrease. The shock decreases. The depression decreases. But the pain continues.
It was an A-team of prosecutors, great courtroom performers.
Clint Rucker was the lead prosecutor, and Anna Green, Kelly Hill, Sheila Ross.
And the evidence will show that the person who sent that hitman to Lita's door is the only person in the world who could have profited from her death. It is the only person in the world who met Tony Harwood and paid him off for killing her, and is the only person in the world who fled halfway around the world to avoid facing you.
Jury was 9 women and 3 men.
The jury is also racially mixed.
Jim Sullivan had Ed Garland and Don Samuel. Again, the people who won that big courtroom victory against the feds.
What the state relies on is two types of evidence. Circumstantial evidence, and then the testimony of con men.
The state initially started out the nature of the crime and what happened that morning.
I heard two sounds. They sounded to me like steel hitting steel.
I just didn't want to believe that it was a gun. And so I hesitated for a second, and then I really knew that it was a gun.
She was able to squeeze my hand each time I spoke with her, like she understood what I was saying. And for many, many years after this, I thought that's all it was. And then one day I realized that she was comforting me more than I was comforting her. That was the sort of lady I felt she was.
They had the phone calls that the FBI had found.
There was a call from this room to Mr. Sullivan's home at 7:44 in the morning.
But all this testimony notwithstanding, it's Belinda Trahan and Tony Harwood who everybody wants to hear from.
Belinda Trahan was the most important witness in the case.
He told me that some white guy who wanted to take out his black wife. I didn't believe it.
Why not?
I've been with him for 3 years, over 3 years. I mean, I figured he met someone because we were on the outs.
Most chilling about Belinda's testimony is that she confirms that there was at least one failed attempt on Lita's life.
She testifies that when Tony had gone to Lita's house on January 13th, then she didn't come to the door. They drove back to North Carolina and told Belinda that, you know, it didn't work.
But Belinda testifies that hearing that from her boyfriend left her incredulous.
I said, just don't even lie to me. I said, because anyone knows that if you wanted to get a woman to answer the door, all you would have to do is take flowers to the door.
Did you in any way mean for that to be a suggestion as to how to get the job accomplished?
No, not at all.
Here's Belinda Trahan, and she is falling on the sword about what she did.
She suggested the flowers.
She suggested the flowers, and she admitted that on the stand.
You brought in the diner booth where they sat. Why couldn't you just tell the jury and show pictures?
I want you to see the puzzle once it's all put together. Yeah, I can show you the box. I can show you a photograph of it, but when I put it together and I show it to you, you'll never forget it.
Pushed the paper across the table like this, and then Tony put his hand on it and took it from there.
And there was a particular moment when she is asked to stand up in court and identified the person she witnessed give Tony Harwood an envelope full of money.
Please, point him out.
It's right there. He can't even make eye contact.
Your Honor, may the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant, James Sullivan.
But if prosecutors feel like Belinda Trahan's testimony is helping their case, they have to know that it's just as big a risk to put Tony Harwood on the stand.
Can you show the jurors the body language Mr. Sullivan used and the tone of voice, if it's possible, that he used when he was explaining to you that his wife, Lita, was a problem?
You know, I've got this wife of mine up in Atlanta, and she is just trying to take everything I've got. And I don't know what to do about it. I need someone to take care of my problem. Do you know anybody that can possibly take care of my problem for me? Because I need some help here.
We could prove Tony Harwood and James Sullivan actually met each other. So I spent the first part of Tony Harwood's examination confirming his signature on the hotel receipt.
And I put signature, Johnny Fur.
The fact that he actually went to the flower shop.
Who actually went inside the flower shop to purchase the flowers.
I did.
They had Tony Harwood saying that he was the one who made the collect call to Jim Sullivan's house.
What did you say to him?
I said, Merry Christmas. And he said, I understand. And that was it.
What were you trying to convey to Mr. Sullivan by giving him that signal, those code words?
That his problem was taken care of.
The defense had their chance to cross-examine Harwood. Not a single question. The two key witnesses were, of course, Belinda Trahan and Tony Harwood. And so, in closing arguments, the defense assailed their credibility.
You should reject everything that came out of his mouth. Harwood says envelope in the bathroom. She says an envelope at this booth over here.
Garland presents to the jury a letter-sized envelope stuffed with bills. Harwood had said it was all cash in $20 bills.
See, oops, some of it fell out, and some more. It won't fit in an envelope. The whole story just doesn't make sense.
In your closing arguments, you actually brought in a doorbell. Why? What was the point?
I wanted the jurors to have that sense of what Lita Sullivan experienced right before her murder.
An ordinary moment.
In an ordinary moment. The second reason why I did it is because James Sullivan liked to read books. And one of his favorite authors wrote a book called For Whom the Bell Tolls.
I'm going to ask you through your verdict of guilty to each and every count to tell James Vincent Sullivan for whom the bell tolls. Tell him that it tolls for thee. For you. For you.
And then I rang the doorbell 3 times.
As the jury goes out to deliberate, I think there's a real fear. Are they going to do it this time, or is it going to be like every other time?
I do not see this as a slam dunk for the state.
There's this anxiety. You're worried, but you're hopeful. I don't care who you talk to that does this kind of work as a litigator. They will tell you, oh, I can look at the jurors and I probably can tell you what they're going to do. No, you don't. You don't.
This is breaking news.
We do have breaking news at this hour. The jury having reached a verdict in the trial of Jim Sullivan.
The jury came back within a few hours on the same day.
It was so silent, and the tension was just palpable.
There's this anxiety. You don't know what it's going to be. You don't know how it's going to turn out, and you're worried, but you're hopeful.
It's hard not to think of Lita's family, her parents especially, after so many fits and starts to win justice for their firstborn child. It comes down to this moment.
The judge says,
"Ma'am, would you publish the verdict?"
And then from that moment until they get finished, nobody is breathing.
Count 1, malice murder. We, the jury, find the defendant, James Vincent Sullivan, guilty of malice murder.
I got a chance to hug Emory McClinton. I had never been hugged so tight before. This was his baby. And we had finally, after 19 years, brought that man a sense of satisfaction. I'll never forget it. The conviction of James Sullivan was the biggest puzzle that I had solved in my career. And it is one that gave me the most satisfaction that I had ever experienced as a prosecutor.
The court hears victim impact statements. What a loss it was to have Lita gone from their lives.
I dream of Lita often. She is smiling and walking in my direction, and I in hers. But we never reach each other.
The jury came back and gave him life in prison without the possibility of parole.
I am so very pleased, and I'm happy. What we were waiting for was something in our judicial system, something to happen and to bring it all together, and that's what you see today.
Why did it take 20 years, do you think?
It goes back to the resources.
He had privilege?
White privilege, completely. He knew how to manipulate people, and he had the resources to do that.
You've got a black victim, you've got a white defendant. Did race hover in this courtroom over this case at all?
I think in our criminal justice system, unfortunately, race always permeates throughout a case. But I'm thankful to say the evidence in the case overcame that racial component.
They never received any money. Is there money? Where is this money?
He's been able to secret his money. For the McClintons, seeing him rot in a prison in South Georgia brings them a whole lot more satisfaction.
This is a woman who you never met, I've never met, most of the people involved in this case never met her, and yet her life really made an impact. When somebody dies in this kind of manner, they don't stop being a member of the family, they don't stop being a member of the community, they never stop mattering.
When they killed Gary, they killed Gary.
I still can see it when I close my eyes.
This windshield pops off the car and goes how many feet?
400 feet. I'm the killer. I got my gym bag, which fits in the country club scenario. Open the door, put it down, close the door. I walk away.
It is one of the most notorious murders in Tucson history.
He was a wonderful father. He was a true gentleman and a true kind person.
They rubbed shoulders with people in high society.
Everybody thought car bombing has to be a mob hit. Very spectacular. We're sending a message.
Turns out, according to some, who didn't want him dead. A long list of persons of interest, an ex-girlfriend, an ex-wife, ex-business associates.
It was pure obsession. His hatred was pure obsession.
And we're going to reenact the bombing.
Everybody's under?
To see how it could have been done.
2, 1.
Now we're starting to pick up some heavy components.
That you can take what seems like a scene of classic chaos and create any kind of order out of it is remarkable to us. So what specifically did you find as you looked at all that evidence?
And it was titled To Kill. And right at the top of the list was Gary Treno.
All of a sudden there was this thunderous boom.
I heard this huge bang, and I rushed over there, tried to see if there's something I could do.
Okay, what's going on there? Okay, there's some kind of an explosion in the country club parking lot. I'm not sure. We have one of the victims has no pulse. They've begun CPR. I guess it's a massive fire. It was some kind of an explosion.
The building shook. I'd never felt anything like that. I immediately turned. I went out to the parking lot, and there was a car on fire, split open like a sardine can.
I found a man still sitting in his seat, no pulse, pale, blood's gone out of him, just white.
Dr. Sam Buttman had come up alongside the car towards me. He looked at me and he said, "Damn, he's dead."
Ken Halligan knew who the dead man behind the wheel of the destroyed car was. He was a longtime member of the country club named Gary Triano.
And there's a member, and he was playing with Gary, and he was sitting on the floor next to his locker, and he was just sobbing. They killed Gary, they killed Gary.
But the question was, who killed Gary? And why would they do it in such a spectacular way? The blast had stopped Gary's gold Movado watch at 5:38 p.m. End of the line for a wheeler dealer who was unafraid to gamble on the golf course, or for that matter in the business world. And according to his lawyer, Ron Lehman, a man always ready to bet big on himself.
Gary was a tall person who would command a room when he walked in. Dark hair, always had a nice suntan, always had a smile. He was larger than life.
Starting in the 1980s, this former car salesman, he'd sought to take advantage of the population boom in Tucson by getting into real estate and land development and gaming on a Native American reservation.
One of Gary's most successful projects was Indian gaming. You're talking about a high-volume slot machine operation. Gary's personal take was $1 million a month.
Gary Triano was not shy about spending that mega money on the finer things in life. You know, limos, Learjets, even a yacht.
He loved spending $25,000 a week on wine while he was cruising around the Adriatic Sea with his financing partners.
Let's have a look at some of these. This one you were just telling us is very special to your heart.
Well, this picture is because it was on my birthday, 16 days before he died. He was very kind and gracious and generous.
That, too, was Gary Triano, a valued role model and mentor for his niece, Melissa Triano. As her uncle and later her employer, he was a figure of warmth and encouragement for her after a childhood full of hardships.
What was it like for you, after all the experiences you've gone through, to really get to know this man and to come to respect the way he went through life?
It changed my life. He was the only person that really believed in me and made me feel like I could, be successful with anything.
He'd had 2 children with his wife, Mary. Gary was a devoted father of his son and daughter, and the couple had become a fixture of Tucson society.
Who's on vacation in Europe with their 2 children, and he just announces, I'm leaving you.
Pam was a figure of widespread fascination and could be every bit a life-altering sensation. As much of a merger as a marriage, Gary and Pam were officially power-coupled at a black-tie wedding on a yacht in San Diego.
Did you hear that the vows they exchanged included the phrase, for richer or for richer, instead of for richer or poorer?
I think I remember that now that you say that, yeah.
You did hear that?
Yeah.
Gary bought Pam a beautiful diamond ring, which he claimed was worth $250,000. They had twin Jaguars. They had this beautiful home at the base of the Catalina Mountains.
Pam and Gary would have 2 kids of their own, while rubbing shoulders with some powerful peers.
Pam and Gary knew Donald Trump, Marla Maples. Donald and Marla came to a University of Arizona basketball game with Gary and Pam.
He invited Donald Trump out to be his partner at the member guest. And of course, he had to make sure that everybody in the club knew a month before.
So, on that fateful day of November 1st, 1996, Gary Triano was approaching his 53rd birthday with a note of optimism, unaware of the big surprise that awaited him as he stepped off the 18th green. In fact, this invite had gone out to all of Gary's friends, inviting them to a surprise birthday party that was to begin in just a few hours.
Around 4:30, Gary was in the bar with a couple of his buddies at a table. One of the members actually walked up to him and actually said, "Happy birthday." I had no idea it was his birthday.
Gary is walking towards his Lincoln Town Car, and he's sliding into the seat, and he sees a blue canvas bag on the passenger seat.
An early birthday gift left in his unlocked car by a friend, perhaps? Gary leans over to unzip the bag and...
The impact of the explosion was incredible. The front windshield flew like 200 feet into the air and landed in the swimming pool.
I'm at home, it's after hours, and I get a call from my sergeant, and basically he says there's been a car explosion at the La Paloma Country Club.
Detective James Gamber was a newly minted detective with the Tucson Sheriff's Department, and he was brand new to homicide. This was his second case.
When he arrived on scene, you could see the victim vehicle. It blew the car doors open, tore the roof off the car. Gary's body is still in the driver's seat.
When Melissa Triano heard there had been some sort of incident with Gary, she immediately rushes over to the country club.
So what do you remember feeling as you were running towards the car?
Just panic, just shock. I didn't think it was real. The whole top of the car was gone. I still can see it when I close my eyes.
Immediately, cops were asking who could have wanted to kill Gary in such a spectacular fashion. They would quickly learn a lot of people.
Was it to send the message, don't ever mess with us?
So in the movie Casino, Robert De Niro's character, closely based on the real-life mobster Frank Lefty Rosenthal, climbs into his 1983 Eldorado, turns on the ignition, and is engulfed in a fireball.
A bombing sort of has mafia written all over it. Who would want to detonate a bomb at a posh country club in broad daylight with, over 100 witnesses watching?
Arizona has a past with the mob. In the mid-'70s, newspaper reporter Don Bowles, he was investigating organized crime, getting national attention, covered by Walter Cronkite.
Don Bowles is a 47-year-old investigative reporter for the Arizona Republic. He's been working on a series about the mafia.
And when Bowles returned to his car, a remote-controlled bomb exploded under the driver's seat.
Bowles uttered the word mafia as he lay dying, but police were never able to pin his death on organized crime. Strictly speaking, what killed Gary Triano was not a car bomb. It was a pipe bomb on the passenger seat, detonated by remote control. And as Detective James Gamber began looking into Gary's murder, the mob was top of mind.
Everybody thought car bombing has to be a mob hit. Very spectacular. We're sending a message. Don't ever mess with us.
Somebody sent a message, and you don't know if they're coming for you next or if it's the whole family. I didn't know if he was involved with something that might want to hurt us all. You were on guard all the time.
But why would the mob or anyone else have it in for Gary Triano? Well, maybe because by the time he was leaving that country club on the first day of November 1996, he was no longer the high-flying millionaire everyone thought he was. In fact, Gary was flat broke.
He owed $4.5 million to 4 casinos in Las Vegas that were supposedly had mob ties.
Gary had owned chunks of undeveloped real estate. He'd invested in a radio station, even financed this misbegotten movie, The Mafu Cage, starring Lee Grant, Carol Kane, Will Geer, and an orangutan.
Isn't he too big for her to handle? No, he's not.
Normally, yes, perhaps, but he's very gentle.
Did you ever see your uncle's movie?
Oh my gosh, yes. In fact, I had a horse once and I named it Mafu. And we joke about it still because that movie was just horrible. It was horrible.
But it wasn't movies like that or real estate that was making Gary rich. It was Native American gambling. He was making millions until he wasn't.
The Bureau of Indian Affairs threw him out of the administration of that contract. Gary personally lost $1 million approximately in monthly income.
So suddenly now he's at a zero income, but his expenses and his lifestyle, continued.
These things were happening during the real estate recession, so things hit the fan at once.
Investigators set their sights on Gary Triano's financial dealings because he owed large sums of money to a lot of people.
There were any number of suspects that the Sheriff's Department was looking at. There were Chinese investors, there were Mexican investors, there were mafia investors, all of whom Gary purportedly owed money to.
It was a house of cards that was crumbling fast. He was promising investors, collateral on property that he didn't own. He was promising Mexican investors money that he didn't have.
He had that gambler mentality, so he was quite a challenge to manage as a member. I constantly chased him financially. He was very good at tipping, but not very good at paying his bills.
And at one point, Pam got a phone call and picked up the phone and heard on the other line a threat from one of the investors saying, if we don't get paid, we're going to kill you. Gary became extremely paranoid, and he starts to sleep with a loaded gun in his bed.
By the 90s, Gary was on the hook for $27 million. He'd run out of time, he'd run out of ideas, and declared bankruptcy.
When Gary ran out of money, his marriage started to disintegrate.
Pam had sort of had enough. She had married this man who was worth millions, and now he wasn't.
So Pam's done, and she files for divorce, and she flees, and she heads off to Aspen with her children.
A bitter divorce and financial ruin left Gary scrambling to stay afloat.
Things were so bad in Gary's life that he went from living in the nicest houses wherever he was around the world to sleeping on a friend's couch.
One of Gary Triano's friends from high school met with Gary Triano the day before he died. Gary was trying to get him and his father to give him a $50,000 loan. His friend described him as anxious and desperate. That loan never happened, and tomorrow never came.
That summit to plummet journey meant it wasn't even his Lincoln Town Car that Gary had driven to La Paloma that day. He'd borrowed it from a friend to keep up appearances. And before Gary was even buried, Detective Gamber already had a long list of persons of interest.
We monitor the funeral, as morbid as that may sound. Who shows up, who didn't show up, who wasn't appropriate, who was appropriate. It was a good way to see who should we go talk to.
And Gamber noticed one particularly interesting absence.
Pamela Phillips wasn't at the funeral. She was conspicuously absent. But based on the acrimony and the separation, that didn't really surprise us.
But associates of an eccentric billionaire say he had reasons of his own to want Gary Triano very dead.
He had the capacity and the resources and the henchmen, if you will, to construct the kind of bomb that blew up Gary Triano.
And this doctor claims he saw a kill list written in that man's daily plan.
And it was titled "To Kill," and it was numbered. And right at the top of the list was Gary Triano.
At the Pima County Sheriff's Office, way in the back corner of the impound lot, after 28 years, is Gary Triano's last ride, that 1989 Lincoln Town Car. Detective James Gamber showing up close just how devastating that pipe bomb was on that huge mass of Detroit metal.
And this is Gary Triano. This is the car he was driving.
And I know that there's been a lot that's been picked over this, and it's changed over the many years since this crime happened, but you can still see the incredible destruction that took place. This roof is supposed to be flat, essentially, isn't it?
Essentially, right. It should lay right along this line. And you can, if you get a look down here at the frame, you can see where the floorboards have been blown off of the side body panels.
Wow.
Just by the force of that blast downwards.
And the whole arc of this is the result of that bomb also.
Right. Yeah. And this, you know, if you looked at this, almost looks like the path of travel of a bullet. Well,
yeah.
Technically it was. It's a projectile, shrapnel.
So everybody knew it was Gary's car. The one thing Gary never did was lock his car.
Lock his car, lock his doors. So I'm the killer.
Right.
I walk up here. I got my duffel bag, my gym bag, which fits in the country club scenario.
Right.
Open the door, put it down, close the door. I walk away.
So finding that killer became Detective Gamber's main goal. There was a monumental list of individuals to go through. but only a few on it were known to have explicit feelings of rage against Gary.
I mean, anytime you have a crime scene this large and this many witnesses, you have to follow every possible lead.
For Detective Jim Gamber, one person with hints of rage was an ex-girlfriend whom he'd broken up with while she was pregnant with his child.
There's a lot of people that talk about how volatile Robin Gardner was.
Robin Gardner was pregnant when Gary left her.
And according to investigators, Robin was so angry, she'd thrown a glass vase at his head.
And this, of course, sent Detective Gamber down another path of like, okay, is this somebody else who might have wanted, Gary dead?
But having met Robin and talked to her, it's like, nah. If it was going to happen, it was going to happen right there. It wasn't going to be, she was going to come back in 6 months and blow his car up.
Even though she was angry at Gary, it was sort of a anger that had dissipated. There wasn't really a reason to investigate her further.
There were a lot of rumors going around about threats that Gary may have received. A lot of the early focus was on people that invested, and then Gary lost the money.
There was no shortage of them to check out. When Gary went bust in May of '94, he left $27 million worth of creditors holding the bag, and that was including those Mexican and Chinese investors. Investigators were able to clear all of them. But there was a man who not only got stiffed by Gary Triano, he got humiliated by Gary too, a Tucson trustafarian named Neil McNeese.
Neil McNeese was, by all accounts, a billionaire by inheritance. He was sort of a trust fund baby, if I could use that term, and he had a lot of money. His own Learjet, I think it was, traveled a lot.
He even had his own personal doctor, Lawrence D'Antonio, accompanying him on his travels.
My job was to keep him alive. He was a terrible drug addict and an alcoholic.
He became acquainted with Gary Triano. They probably frequented the same clubs or things of that nature. And Neil McNeese was somebody who had a lot of money to invest or spend on people.
According to investigators, Gary Triano had approached Neil for $80 grand to invest in him immediately. But McNeese wanted collateral for his $80,000 loan, and newly divorced Gary had just the answer.
So Gary Triano gave Neil McNeese Pam Phillips's supposed diamond ring that Gary represented was worth $250,000.
About 5 days later, he goes to his jeweler who tells him, "You're the proud owner of a ring worth about $7,000. It's a cubic zirconium." And Neil went crazy. Went crazy in the jeweler shop, went absolutely crazy.
And so Neil McNeese did not want to be taken as a fool. And so it was said that he had put Gary on a kill list.
It was titled "To Kill." Right at the top of the list, the day I originally saw it, was Gary Triano. And he never stopped saying, "I'm going to kill Gary Triano," from that day.
And his former associates allege, along with his vast wealth, McNeese also knew the right people, people that had the capacity to make a bomb.
The moment I heard on the newscast on my car radio that the victim was Gary Triano, I absolutely believed 100% that he was assassinated by Neil McNeese.
What we could find out about Neil McNeese is that he was a lot of loudmouth, but very little follow through. Nothing to connect McNeese to a device. And if he killed Gary, that didn't get him his money back. And he wasn't so financially hit that, he was down to his last dime. So did he do it? Again, not a strong connection.
So little hard evidence pointing to anyone for Detective Gamber. But then, out of the clear blue, Pima County receives a call from an out-of-state detective about an abandoned minivan some 500 miles away in California. It's crammed with stuff that has a name on it. That name is Gary Triano. But why? 800 miles away from the Tucson, Arizona desert, atop the snowy mountains of Colorado. Two cases are about to collide, and there's a tantalizing new lead about to emerge, thanks to a fraud investigation by Aspen detective James Crowley into a local named Ron Young.
What I was hearing was he had a great, line to get into your business. He was going to do all these great things for you. I'm so awesome, and I'm going to make you a ton of money.
Ron Young was someone who was, even for the mid-90s, fairly adept at computers and establishing an online presence even back then.
He comes to the attention of Detective Crowley after two local businessmen allege that Ron has stolen more than $100,000, and they both want to press charges.
If Ron became your business manager, he would instantly want all the books, access to all the financials, which gave him an opportunity to transfer money out of your bank account to his own bank account, get credit cards issued in his name on your account.
So Crowley gets search and arrest warrants and sets out to pay Ron Young a visit at his place on Snow Bunny Lane.
So this is Snow Bunny Lane, where Ron Young lived at one point. On the corner where the carport was Ron's house. So we get there and he's gone. He's nowhere to be found.
Ron Young is 6'6", maybe 300 pounds. But where is he gone? 6 months later, Detective Crowley gets a call from the cops in Yorba Linda, California.
What happened was that police in California find an abandoned van, and it's a rental van out of Aspen.
Authorities discovered that the abandoned Dodge Caravan was rented by Ron Young. It was parked outside his parents' house.
And it's an unlocked van. And so when police do come and they open the van, they discover some very unusual things inside.
And as Detective Crowley learns, more than one of those things has Gary Triano's name on it.
There's divorce documents between Gary Triano and Pam Phillips. There are maps of Tucson. There are lists of names of associates with Gary Triano.
And they discover something else that's sort of unusual. It's a sawed-off shotgun. I mean, fraud suspects, they're not usually violent.
It was Crowley's first encounter with Gary Triano's name, but he recognized the name Pamela Phillips because earlier that year, she had walked into the Aspen Police Department and accused Ron Young of stealing money from her bank accounts.
In investigating Ron, there were 2 fraud cases initially, and then Pamela had come in to report the 3rd fraud case.
Detective Crowley had an outstanding warrant for Ron Young's arrest. So why did his still-at-large fraud suspect appear to be all up in the business of this Gary Triano from Tucson, Arizona? Then came November 1st, 1996, and the morning after.
I was sitting at my desk in the investigations office and reading the paper and saw the headline.
It was the shocking pipe bomb murder of Gary Triano.
And it kind of, when you get an adrenaline dump and you get that kind of metal taste in your mouth, and that's kind of what it was.
And so Detective Crowley calls Pima County Sheriff's Department.
And I said, here's what I have. You might be interested in this.
And when Pima County gets this call from Detective Crowley, laying out the evidence retrieved from the van, especially those documents with Gary Triano's name on them, they finally have the connection they've been waiting for.
So what was an Aspen fraud case now is firmly interwoven with our homicide case.
Detective Crowley also hands over to detectives in Tucson a notebook from the van. Inside that notebook, a handwritten list of names, including Gary Triano's niece, Melissa.
They brought it to me, and in that notebook was Melissa Triano, license plate Missy. My license plate said Missy on a black Corvette, and that was my car. So he had been following me, and it was terrifying.
But now, no one can find where Ron Young is or get any answers he might have. And so the investigation into the identity of Gary's killer, it stalls. for nearly 10 years. Until an expert enters the case who's got decades of experience. And that helps investigators with the identity of Gary's killer from a painstaking reconstruction of the bomb itself.
People think when the explosion occurs, everything goes away. Well, it doesn't.
Here we are in New Mexico, Anthony.
Yes.
A typical land of enchantment landscape around us here, right? Kind of desolation and
mountain desert area.
So a decade after the murder of Gary Triano, the case has gone stone cold. The Sheriff's Department decides to invite one of ATF's top bomb experts, Anthony May, into the investigation, just to see if he could help determine who built that bomb that wound up in Gary's car. Anthony, when I think of blowing stuff up in New Mexico, I think of the movie Oppenheimer, something in Los Alamos, right?
Yeah, a little bit south there, but yes.
You guys gotta hold on, hold on.
So if you go just outside Socorro, New Mexico, you'll find this 40-square-mile field laboratory, and it's called the Energetic Materials Research and Testing Center, EMERTEC for short. It's a research and training division of New Mexico Tech, and it's a place where highly skilled bomb specialists do their work with explosives. So we're blowing something up today, aren't we?
Yes, we are. We're going to reenact a bombing that occurred in 1996 that ended up taking Gary Triano's life.
Today, Anthony May is going to take us inside his field of explosive expertise and show us just how this kind of detective work can help authorities identify a killer. What kind of car is this that we're looking at right here?
It's a Ford Mercury Grand Marquis. It's not the exact vehicle, but it is similar in body style and chassis.
Meliton Flores is a research engineer and assistant director here at EMERTEC. He and his team are the ones who found the car and put together a pipe bomb, all closely resembling Gary Triano's car and what was inside it on the evening of November 1st, 1996.
We'll be safely tucked away in the upper bunker. We have a flag that you'll see behind your shoulder there. That flag is currently in the down position, which means that testing is imminent.
The EMERTEC engineers have these high-speed cameras ready to film the explosion at 20,000 frames per second.
Morning, everybody. So today we got a recreation shot of a 1996 bombing in Arizona. It's gonna be a pipe bomb. Once the bomb goes off, we're gonna wait until for Merkel he'll give it the all clear. It's the desert, it's hot, so drink plenty of water. We got snakes, we got scorpions, we got spiders, so watch out for all that.
Tesla. Yeah, hold on. Let me do a quick roll call up here.
Like with the Triano case, the pipe bomb is placed in a blue canvas bag and it's positioned on the passenger seat. A technician spools out the firing fuse. We take cover in a bunker some 2,000 feet away.
Everybody's undercover?
All right, we're all good here.
Tesla, your range.
Okay, you ready, Tesla? 2, 1.
Every bomb scene tells a story, and the debris scattered by this bomb is much like the debris that was scattered after the bomb that exploded in Tucson on November 1st, 1996. Debris gathered up by law enforcement that Anthony May would go on to analyze. So after the all clear, we move in for a closer look.
It would be up, most of it is going to be up over that ridge. Well, we're going to walk into the blast scene. Now we're starting to pick up some heavy components, and now we're going to decide, is it from the car? Is it from the bomb? And what I'm seeing is car parts here, the door handle. As I can see already, the roof of the car is over here. Looking at the roof of the car, most of our fragments went straight up.
Does it matter to you that it went straight up?
It'll tell me the orientation of that pipe bomb.
That you can take what seems like a scene of classic chaos and create any kind of order out of it is remarkable to us.
That's the objective. Take a look at what the crime scene is telling you, what the evidence tells you, and then go from there.
It is one of the most notorious murders in Tucson history. Opening statement.
Back in 2005, it was Anthony May taking the fragments of that 1996 bomb that killed Gary Triano and reassembling the device, hoping that the process would offer some leads in a case that had grown cold.
This is actually a picture of when Jim brought the evidence up to me. It's just kind of like a puzzle now. I'm trying to match pieces. This is the pieces of the pipe.
So what specifically did you find as you looked at all that evidence?
People think when the explosion occurs, everything goes away. Well, it doesn't. There's 95 to 99% of the device still there. It's just different configurations. I was able to determine the size. It was about a 17-inch pipe bomb.
So it took Tony May about a month to piece back together all the fragments of the bomb, and he showed us the reproduction he was able to construct. So somehow from all this material, you're able to recreate something that looks very much like what the actual bomb must have been.
Yes.
Is there any indication that Gary Triano would have seen that bag in the seat next to him?
Well, he in fact did see it. There was a witness that said that he saw Gary Triano get in the car and then lean over into the passenger seat, meaning that the bomber was also somewhere close by with the remote control device, and when he saw him lean over the bag, that's when he initiated the device.
And just like any puzzle, once the pieces start to fit together, there's a picture that emerges that would eliminate some suspects and start to bring others into sharper focus.
We had found a piece in the debris here of parts that were soldered together. There were globs of solder.
The globs instantly told you, not somebody who does this on a regular basis.
Doesn't do it on a regular basis. The question to me was, is this a professional hit? Are we dealing with a mafia? From the design, the construction, the soldering, the battery, I don't see that.
Turns out the outdated 6-volt battery used on the bomb was also a clue about the bomber's age.
That indicated to me that we're not dealing with some young individual who has experience with AA batteries or 9-volt batteries.
That it might have been an amateur building their first bomb, and that the choice of battery was suggesting an older suspect, excluded organized crime, and got authorities focusing on the man with the disorganized van, Ron Young.
So the way the device was built fit Ron's profile. So it's just another brick in the wall kind of thing.
And as investigators continued to build that wall, they are intrigued by the enticing link between Ron Young and Gary's ex, Pam Phillips. Were they more than business partners? And will unearthed audio recordings reveal whether Pam was possibly an accomplice in the murder of her ex-husband Gary Triano, or a victim of Ron Young?
I don't even want to talk about it right now.
If I ever found out that you compromised me, you're, a fried duck.
It's a story about sex, lies, and audio tape, and a sensational bombing.
It was something that absolutely shook Tucson to its core. It was horrific, it was violent.
I'm the killer. I got my gym bag, open the door, put it down, close the door, I walk away.
The ex-wife, the business manager, the murder. How do they all fit together?
Pamela Phillips was a socialite, a beautiful blonde bombshell. She was the quintessential trophy wife.
Why would she have been so mad at him?
Nothing went her way through that whole divorce, and she was furious by it.
And so she's on the hunt for her next husband.
She said, I need to find a husband that is worth $20 million or more.
Finding them would be the real problem.
Is it okay to talk?
Yeah.
Copy down what you need to copy in your own code and throw this away.
To this day, I keep calling it the treasure trove of evidence. It was astounding what was there.
If he was a real hitman,
Why is he not threatening her with her life or threatening her family, her kids?
It's a sensational trial, complete with sex, money, and murder.
It's summed up in one word: greed.
Here in Tucson, Arizona, handsome, self-confident land developer Gary Triano was married to Pamela Phillips, herself a charismatic player in Tucson real estate. They were a power couple with expensive tastes and the assets to satisfy them.
It was almost like lifestyles of the rich and famous.
But after the real estate boom went bust, Gary went bankrupt.
Pamela began to realize maybe Gary wasn't all that he was cracked up to be. Like maybe there were little cracks in this armor here. Because Gary started to let her in on some things, like he's indebted to multiple people.
Following their divorce, Glam Pam and their 2 kids moved to Aspen.
I saw Gary as being somewhat downtrodden, somewhat sad. Sad he was losing his family, sad he had lost all his earthly riches.
But ever the optimist, Gary felt confident he'd be on top once again soon. Until November 1st, 1996, when a car bomb blew his comeback and his car to smithereens in a parking lot just like this one. But who or what wanted Gary Triano dead? Despite Pam and Gary's bitter divorce, investigators could see no immediate connection between Pam in Colorado and Gary's pipe bomb murder in Arizona, until cops stumbled across that minivan in California belonging to Ron Young, packed with documents with Gary and Pam's names on them.
It was great because we had no association with Pam and the murder until then. Before Pam was in Aspen, the bomb went off in Tucson. How could Pam have pushed the button? Okay, now we have that connection. We have Ron Young bridging that distance for us.
Pima County investigators needed to understand the complex relationship between Pam Phillips and Ron Young. According to friends, that relationship had begun here on Aspen Snow Bunny Lane, where Ron Young lived. Pam was practically his next-door neighbor.
And at the time, Snow Bunny Lane in that area was where kind of working people, doctors, lawyers, normal people in Aspen lived.
It was not Pam Phillips' kind of neighborhood, a long way down from that mansion in Arizona. So she asked her neighbor, Ron Young, to help out on her business idea. It was an astrology website called starbabies.com.
If your baby was born under a certain time, you could get their zodiac and all that. It was that type of thing that Pam wanted to do and start up a little business like that. And he helped set that up.
A new-in-town ski instructor who'd gotten a side gig as a live-in Manny for Pam's 2 kids, Kevin McDonald says he saw a lot of Ron Young.
He would come over and spend time with Pam and was helping her with the Star Babies, and then he would have dinners with her. And I could see that there was more than just being the down the street neighbor. After the kids were asleep, Pam didn't want them to see them being intimate or being more than just friends.
Kevin would recall Pam as a good and caring mother to her kids. But according to Pam's friends, starbabies.com and Ron Young were only part of her plan to return to the top of the mountain here in ski country.
Pam was always out in the different private bars and private clubs in Aspen trying to meet rich men. And because she said, I need to find a husband that is worth $20 million or more.
If it was Pam's long-term goal, It was fueled by her short-term needs. She was running out of money. And for that, she blamed Gary Triano.
Why would she have been so mad at him?
Nothing went her way through that whole divorce, and she was furious by it. And she wanted money. She needed money to continue her lifestyle.
Once Pam and Gary had cruised on luxury yachts and private planes. Now, Pam was steamed that Gary was making her pay to fly the kids back to Aspen after his visit with them.
Pam told me one night after I put the kids to bed, she just said that she was down to her last $60,000. So I knew that she was worried. She was bleeding money. She wasn't making any money.
Pam was convinced that Gary was hiding assets, so allegedly she asked Ron Young to find them.
Pam's chief complaint during this entire relationship is she's not receiving enough child support from Gary, and he must be hiding assets. But Ron is still really pissed off that he's not being paid for his services.
Because of their business relationship, Ron had access to her accounts, and he allegedly started taking out money for himself. That's what led Pam to report Ron's alleged fraud in the first place. Yet it wasn't long after that Ron Young skipped town and vanished. He was one step ahead of an Aspen arrest warrant.
After Pam came in the initial time, and I asked her to provide follow-up documentation, she never came back.
Ron Young is nowhere to be found, but Pima County sheriffs decide to talk with Pam.
And then when you go to interview Pam, she minimizes Ron Young. Oh, he was not involved in my life. He gave me a little financial advice and things like that.
Yet less than a year later, Pam is out of Snow Bunny Lane and into $1 million home. Why were authorities so interested in her change of fortune?
Pam had 2 million reasons to kill Gary.
Pothole number 3. Allegedly, that's how the twice-divorced Pam Phillips referred to Ron Young, her sometime lover, neighbor, and business associate, in a note she wrote to her aunt.
Ron was not her type. She was used to handsome, charismatic, wealthy men, and Ron was nothing like that.
When Pam moved up to Aspen, she purported not to have any money, was in financial hard times.
There was, however, a $2 million life insurance policy on Gary Triano's life, set up to take care of his 2 kids with Pam.
They were the beneficiaries, with the proviso that if they were under the age of 18, then Pam was the one that would receive the money and appropriately apply it to the children's lives.
Now, even with a friend's assistance, Pam's financial straits were affecting her ability to pay for that policy.
And then we find out that when Pam learned of Gary's death, she was actually almost 30 days in arrear on her premium payment.
Pamela Phillips became hysterical. Not hysterical over Gary's death, but hysterical over the fact that the premium had not been paid for the month of November.
And they rushed a FedEx payment to the insurance company that got there too late. The insurance company, though, honored it anyway.
And 15 days later, Pamela makes a claim on Gary's life.
So it took until January of 1997 before the insurance company paid. Pam got a little over $2 million.
Pam Phillips wastes no time. As soon as she gets this $2 million life insurance proceeds, she goes out and she buys her dream mansion. And it's this home in Meadowood. It has its own ski lift. It's buttressed against the mountains. It's got these like massive wooden doors. It has marble all over the floor.
Weird name, weird things that they said.
So by 2005, this case had really become a cold case.
So we had this one anomaly, Ron Young. And it was, where's Ron Young? Where's Ron Young? Aspen PD had the arrest warrant, so he could be arrested anywhere within U.S. jurisdiction, and just nothing was coming of it. He was like a puff of smoke.
In hopes of teasing Ron Young out of hiding, Detective Gamber uses his network of undercover agents and investigators to approach the TV show America's Most Wanted.
The manhunt for November 19th is now in progress.
Then in 2005, a segment on Ron Young goes on the air.
Could this accused con man also be a cold-blooded killer? Well, cops in Arizona want to find that out.
Right after the America's Most Wanted episode airs, it happens to catch the eye of a chiropractor in Florida whose patient is none other than Ron Young.
So this chiropractor out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, informs America's Most Wanted that not only is his patient Ron Young, but Ron has a scheduled appointment the very next day.
And that's a huge break in the case, because now law enforcement, America's Most Wanted, they can all descend on Florida and make the capture.
Sure enough, Ron Young shows up in time for his appointment.
After his appointment, Ron is returning to his car when Broward County's fugitive unit makes the arrest. All of it captured on America's Most Wanted.
Right behind your back. What's your name? Hey, man. I asked you your name.
Ron Young.
Authorities hold Ron Young on fraud and weapons charges because when Ron's apprehended, he's got a loaded Colt .380 semi-automatic gun in his possession. So now, detectives race to Florida to see what Ron Young might have to say about Pamela Phillips and Gary Triano. But when they touch down, they get a big surprise, one that will blow this case wide open.
We walk over to this box, and there's some micro cassettes sitting in there. And it's like, anybody have a micro cassette recorder? And what was on there is, to this day, I keep calling it the treasure trove of evidence. It was astounding what was there.
I don't even want to talk about it right now.
What I'm saying is if I ever found out that you compromised me for your benefit, it'd be really unfortunate for you.
After being featured on the show America's Most Wanted,
Right behind your back.
Ron Young is arrested in Florida.
Hey, man. I asked you your name.
Ron Young.
Crowley, it calls us and says they got him. So they start talking to Ron Young, and Ron says, sure, you can search my apartment. And yeah, you can search the storage locker I have.
He gives them kind of an extraordinary gift. And it's like he's opening up his treasure trove of evidence for law enforcement. And what they discover, is a major break in the case.
Among the physical evidence seized from Ron's properties, detectives find spreadsheets, FedEx receipts, thousands of email printouts, and letters that shockingly reveal Pam and Ron had been in contact the whole time Ron was a fugitive, even after Pam had accused Ron of fraud and minimized their relationship to police. I think the apparent connection between us is best kept at a minimum, she writes. I don't want to appear as too much of a helper, though you know I am. I love you and count on you. Pamela.
So there was obviously more of a relationship than she was letting on.
But then, as far as evidence goes, the coup de grace.
We walk over to this box, and there's some micro cassettes sitting in there. And it's like, anybody have a micro cassette recorder? And so we pop one of the tapes in, we hit play.
You sent my money yet? My principal.
I am not going to keep sending you more and more money unless I know that you can honor our agreement.
And it's Ron Young's voice and Pam Phillips's voice. We immediately turn the tapes off. We box those up immediately, and those go to the lab to be professionally transferred.
It takes months just for detectives to listen and catalog the dozens of hours of telephone conversations that Ron has secretly recorded. And the contents are stunning.
I'm really happy that your 1.6 was tax-free.
Just say yes. I will take the Ford like it's been coming, and I'd like the balance of it as quick as possible. Yes.
Yes, I want it all I want it all. I want it all as soon as possible. We have no disagreement.
You start to listen to the phone calls, and the next thing you hear is, you got your 2, I want my 4. Well, you have a $2 million insurance policy, and you have Ron getting $400 and some odd thousand in cash from Pam.
Recovered emails and FedEx receipts detail how, at Ron Young's direction, Pam made regular cash payments to him, choreographed, authorities believe, in a manner to avoid detection.
You start following Ron telling Pam, this is how you hide taking the money from your accounts and sending it as cash to me. And he gives her a detailed process to follow.
He was instructing her to take out certain amounts of money at different locations, use different accounts, don't mail from the same place twice, vary your pattern so no one gets wise.
Is it okay to talk?
Yeah.
There's absolutely nothing that shows me having any contact since I left Aspen, or ever really. If you, for any reason, need to keep dates or numbers or anything else, obviously just transpose it into codes.
For investigators, this game of subterfuge and these under-the-radar payments from Pam to Ron is starting to smell like a murder conspiracy.
What he had on his computer was astounding. Pam was paying him on a monthly basis, and he had his own amortization table of the money Pam was paying him with the interest that was due, and it totaled something like $440,000.
Armed with this new evidence, police get a warrant to search Pam's place, the Aspen mansion her slice of the insurance money paid for.
In September of 2006, Pima County Sheriff's Department joined forces with the Aspen Police Department and surround her house, and they knock on the door and they say, we have a search warrant.
Pamela answers the door and they tell her, we have a warrant to search your house, and she said no and closed the door in their face.
Pamela Phillips is completely surprised by this. She tells the police, yeah, my lawyer's on the way, and the detective says, I have a search warrant. So they come in, and the way she describes it is like they're scattering across her marble floors like rats.
While we're executing the search warrant, Pamela decides to leave, and we don't have an arrest warrant for her at that point, so she's free to leave.
She gets into her little Mini Cooper and drives off.
Meanwhile, after pleading guilty to firearms charges, Ron Young is sentenced to 10 months in prison in Florida. After his jail term, he's sent back to Aspen.
He gets extradited to Aspen to face the fraud charges. And it's there that the fraud charges get dismissed. After the charges are dismissed in Aspen, we don't have enough to charge him with the homicide yet. So he is free, but he's on parole from the federal prison.
Ron Young moves to his parents' house in Yorba Linda, California.
So there's all this stuff that's coming together. There's the suspicions about the life insurance policy. Now we've got Ron Young, who's an associate of Pam Phillips, and all these things in the van in California, the names and a notepad of people associated with Gary Triano, maps of Tucson, receipts from a hotel in Tucson near where Gary was living at the time.
After nearly 12 years, the police finally obtain arrest warrants, hoping to bring long-awaited justice in the case of Gary Triano.
We're going to do a simultaneous arrest. We've already put surveillance teams in Aspen, surveillance teams in Yorba Linda. We hit Ron and we arrest him. We go to hit Pam and we do a records check on her, and we find out she flew out of the country to destinations unknown. She was gone.
On Friday, October 17, 2008, cops mount a large-scale operation to simultaneously arrest Ron Young and Pam Phillips for the 1996 murder of her ex, Gary Triano.
We have the arrest warrants. We've already put surveillance teams in Yorba Linda. We've coordinated with local law enforcement. We hit Ron and we arrest him. We extradite him back to Tucson.
But when it comes to arresting Pam, they have a rude awakening.
Pam Phillips, we have every reason to believe, is still living at her house in Aspen. We go to hit Pam and we do a records check on her, and we find out she flew out of the country. She was gone.
Pima County investigators named Young and Triano's former wife, Pamela Phillips, as suspects in the case. They're still looking for Phillips and believe she may be out of the country.
So we have to put out a notice with Interpol. So now the United States Marshals Service and the FBI become involved.
Unbeknownst to police, Pam is in Europe, and she's leaning into the alpine lifestyle in a swanky lakeside town in Switzerland called Lugano.
She has just picked up where she left off. She's recreated her world over there. She's hobnobbing with the elite. She's off hunting again for a rich, eligible bachelor. In fact, has been spotted with several.
While out in Lugano, it's just not Pam's style to keep a low profile. And so, sure enough, a local tipster hears news of Pam's murder indictment and picks up the phone.
I'm sitting at my desk, and I get a call. There's a gentleman who'd like to talk to you. He thinks he knows where Pam is. So everybody's poised to go arrest Pam in Lugano, Switzerland.
But there's a hitch. See, the Swiss government wants a guarantee that the U.S. won't invoke the death penalty. Gamber and his team are able to work out the details.
But when the Swiss police went to arrest her, yeah, she wasn't there.
Ultimately, there's a multinational effort that leads to Pam's arrest in Austria. And while she's sitting in a jail cell in Vienna awaiting extradition, back in the States, Ron Young goes on trial.
The trial itself started in March of 2010. We had been doing pretrial litigation for at least a year and a half leading up to that point.
Some of the challenges that the prosecution faced in Ron's trial was that it was a circumstantial evidence case. They didn't have any direct evidence that linked Ron Young to the bomb.
The prosecution acknowledges no one reported seeing Ron in Tucson on or around November 1st, 1996, nor did he have anything in his possession specifically tying him to Arizona or to Gary Triano on the date of his murder. However, the prosecution does have Anthony May.
My job was to determine what was used and build a reconstruction of the device, and then the device was used to present it in court for his prosecution.
He was able to recreate the entire bomb all the way down to the battery purchased from Radio Shack, the remote-controlled air switch used to operate it, to detonate it, and even down to the duffel bag purchased from Walmart. That was an impressive display in front of the jury, I think.
And the prosecution also had those micro cassette tapes.
I helped you on something that was, beyond what anybody else in the world would probably do, and I think that deserves some consideration, since you're living off the benefits of it.
The prosecution makes the case that in their conversations, Pam and Ron were talking about the murder of Gary Triano.
I am not going to keep sending you more and more money unless I know that you can honor our agreement.
The prosecution points out to the jury an email that surfaced from Ron to Pam, referring to Gary as an 800-pound monster.
The communication between Ron and Pam was the crux of the case.
The defense countering that Ron was simply extorting money from Pam.
What Ron did was not valid. It was blackmail Pam.
Then there was also an out-of-the-blue prison witness with a prosecution-perfect account to tell the jury. Andre Mims, a cellmate of Ron Young's when he was in prison for the 2005 gun charges.
He looked me in my face. He said, Andre, I blew that up in his car.
For the prosecution, Ron Young's one statement to Andre Mims, how he blew Gary Triano up, might as well have been a confession.
But the defense claimed this testimony was made up and immediately called for a mistrial. The motion was denied.
I think we felt confident. I mean, as a prosecutor, even on a strong case, you're always concerned about the potential one outlier juror that could lead to a hung jury.
After 13 hours, the jury reached a verdict.
For the defendant, Ronald Kelly Young, guilty of the offense of first-degree murder.
Ron Young was found guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder.
Ron Young is sentenced to life in prison.
We can't tell you how many times we thought we would never see who killed my father.
But for Gary Triano's family, the story is far from over, and justice has not been served yet.
We still need Pam, and there's a long road still with that.
That long road would lead to a fateful night in July 2010. A plane with Pam Phillips on board, making its way from Vienna to an airport in Arizona, where Melissa Triano and Detective Jim Gamber were waiting.
I think her flight came in at midnight, and we stood outside of the airport and watched her come off the plane.
Pam's comment to the U.S. Marshals was, if Gamber's in the airport, I'm not getting off the plane. They walked her out of the jetway, turned her over to me. They got to walk her all the way out to a patrol car.
I wanted her to see our faces and to know that we were never giving up on bringing her to justice.
As Pam prepares to go on trial, her public defender would mount an ambitious murder trial defense.
This will not be a short trial when it starts. Phillips' defense has listed about 100 witnesses.
He's making these threats to embarrass her. He knows that she is in all these newspaper articles.
Could he surprise everyone and get Pam a not guilty verdict? Gary Triano had left his first wife to pursue Pam Phillips. Then, as a Tucson power couple, they lived high on the hog. Now, 17 years after he was killed, Pam Phillips was on trial for Gary's murder.
For anyone who likes a sensational trial, complete with sex, money, and murder, this one was worth the wait. It has it all.
The trial began February 2014. There was a ton of attention and anticipation. All eyes were on Pamela Phillips.
I think it was probably the biggest case we've ever had.
The Aspen socialite on trial for killing her ex-husband with a car bomb. Pamela Phillips maintains her innocence, but prosecutors say they can prove she's a killer.
For the Triano family, this case represents the ultimate hope in finally bringing justice for Gary.
How was that trial for you and your family?
It was very difficult to sit through when photos or evidence was going to be shown that would be hard. I would get up and walk out.
What made it imperative that you be there then?
It was knowing the truth.
Prosecutors argued that the main reason that Pamela Phillips orchestrated this murder on her ex-husband was the $2 million life insurance policy.
The bulk of our evidence came from Ron Young, the FedEx receipts, the phone calls, the emails that Ron Young had saved.
With records taken from that abandoned minivan in 1996, prosecutors argue how Ron Young closely surveilled Gary Triano's comings and goings, as well as those of Gary Triano's relatives, which included very specific details about Melissa Triano, who took the stand.
The last line has your name on it again, correct?
Yes.
Melissa Triano. Just above your name, what does it say there?
Corvette convertible niece.
The prosecution then brings out a key witness, Laura Chapman, a former friend of Pam's, who recalls a conversation she says she had with Pam before Gary's death.
She said that she should just hire a hitman, have him taken out, and that the insurance policy was a $2 million insurance policy. And she said it would just be really easy to do because he was so predictable because he played golf every day.
The defense claimed Laura's memory was faulty and that Pam was not desperate for the life insurance money because she'd lapsed on that last premium payment.
If you're going to do a murder for hire for the insurance money, aren't you going to be sure that the insurance policy is in place and has been paid?
But for the prosecution, big piece of the puzzle were those taped phone conversations between Ron and Pam, discussing Ron's alleged $400,000 cut of that life insurance policy, where, in the view of the prosecution, Ron says the quiet part out loud.
Right now, I want to know that we are capping it at 4. I don't want this nebulous thing out there that we're supposedly supposed to.
It's not nebulous.
Listen to me. I am very serious about this.
Well, I tell you, you're going to be very serious when you sit in a women's prison for murder.
Oh yeah, that for the jury was our smoking gun.
But defense attorneys assert Ron and Pam were not talking about the murder of Gary Triano. Instead, he was extorting Pam for money.
I'm terrified of everything.
I know.
I mean, I'm living in total fear.
He's making these threats to embarrass her. He knows that she is in all these newspaper articles as a suspect in her ex-husband's bombing. He wants to threaten her reputation in the Aspen community. If he was a real hitman, why is he not threatening her with her life or threatening her family or kids? That's what happens when you have a cold-blooded killer.
The defense doesn't just try to point out how neither Ron nor Pam could be tied directly to the bomb at the scene of the crime. The defense goes one step further and says the culprit is somebody else entirely. Hot-headed billionaire heir Neil McNeese, out that 80 grand to Triano and enraged by his lies and deceit.
Neil McNeese. He lends Gary $80,000 and gets a ring for collateral. He finds out the ring is only worth $8,000 and he's livid. He's furious. He threatens to kill Gary per Dr. D'Antonio.
Remember, Dr. D'Antonio had come forward after Gary died, claiming that Gary Triano was on Neil McNeese's alleged kill list and that he was responsible for Gary Triano's death.
Lawrence D'Antonio was called to the stand, and this was really the crutch of the defense's argument.
I wouldn't describe Neil as a friend.
I heard Neil say he was going to kill Gary Triano probably 10,000 times. It was pure obsession. His hatred was pure obsession.
The defense argues that McNeese not only had motive, he also had the means, with a woodworker friend named Jerry Capuano, who they claim had a shop and the know-how to make a remote-controlled pipe bomb.
The other things found at Mr. Capuano's shop. You saw that little red thing that was used to put together wires. There was one of those at Capuano's shop. There's an exact one of those in the bomb parts that were found.
It makes for an interesting story. They're saying, oh, look at this. Neil McNeese was the real killer, and Capuano was the person who made the bomb. All of them are deceased, so we're not able to follow up on this.
Authorities continue to assert there's no evidence tying McNeese or Capuano to the murder. The McNeese family issuing a statement in 2014, maintaining their belief in his innocence and relief that justice might prevail.
But I mean, the bottom line is we don't have any question whatsoever that Pam Phillips hired Ron Young to kill Gary.
Pamela Phillips never testified during the entire trial. We got glimpses of her personality, right? During the trial, she would look at the camera, she would smile at the camera, even mouthing the words at one point, "I love you," to the camera during court proceedings.
The camera had always loved Pam right back. Now, after 2 months of testimony, it was time to see what a jury would feel about Pam Phillips as they decided her fate.
The lights flickered in the courtroom. My cousin Heather was sitting in front of me and she turned and looked and we just lost it.
We're on verdict watch as jury deliberation continues in the Pamela Phillips murder for hire trial. The Aspen socialite is accused of hiring...
After 26 days of testimony, with 100 witnesses, 670 exhibits, the fate of Pam Phillips lies in the hands of the jury.
Do you find the defendant, Pamela Ann Phillips, guilty of first-degree murder?
Quiet cries of joy and justice. Triano's family says today's verdict has been a long time coming.
Like seconds after the judge said guilty, the lights flickered in the courtroom. It was surreal.
What did that tell you, those lights
That he was there. That he knows.
Gary's family was relieved by all this. The murder was in 1996. Our trial was now 18 years later. I mean, I don't think they wanted it to be Pam, but they knew it was.
Pamela Phillips' attorney maintains his client is not responsible for her ex-husband's death.
The fact that she's going to prison is going to eat away at me the rest of my life.
Pamela Phillips was sentenced to life in prison without parole.
After hearing her sentence, the once prominent socialite turns to address a packed courtroom, the only way she could do so without facing questions.
I am innocent. I am innocent. I am innocent. Okay? This is hard. It's so hard for me. It's a nightmare.
She showed no remorse. She actually turned around to the gallery for the first time. At this point, she was just pandering to the camera.
And I don't understand how this can even happen, right?
Never any mention as to the loss of life, but everything came back to the impact it had on her personally.
Outside the courtroom, after losing their father almost 2 decades earlier, Gary's children expressing both gratitude and sadness at the outcome.
We'd like to thank all our friends and everyone who supported us through this entire time. And we're sorry that it had to come to this, because this woman was actually part of our family.
Meanwhile, Pam's accomplice, Ron Young, also spending the rest of his life in prison, and he's exhausted all of his appeals. Pam, however, is still fighting for post-conviction relief based on DNA evidence found back in 2014.
We found DNA on threads of 2 screws that were embedded into the platform, which was wood, for the pipe bomb. When that came in, we were able to exclude Ronald Young.
Pam's appellate attorney maintaining that new, more sophisticated DNA technology will prove that someone other than Ron Young and Pam Phillips murdered Gary Triano.
Well, the next step in the process, we did file our petition for post-conviction relief. I'm hopeful that we can do some genealogical testing if we can find the money to do that.
They get better DNA that come back and tie to Jerry Capuano, then that might get her a chance for a new trial.
Prosecutors stand by the verdict. They continue to say that neither billionaire Neil McNeese nor his friend Jerry Capuano were in any way responsible for Gary's murder.
Where I find fault with this is that they, didn't submit Gary Triano as a reference sample. Now, whose DNA do you think is probably all over that scene? How do you buy screws at a hardware store? You don't buy screws that have never been touched by another human being. So finding some lone DNA profile and blast debris doesn't impress me.
If you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those 2 imposters just the same, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginning, and never breathe a word about your loss. And that's just how my uncle lived.